Here we go, here we go. A little bit of the late heading up to the mountain. Yours truly gotta begin with gratitude, grateful, thankful that my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and we're heading east from the north, from the south, from the east, from the west. Always for the firefighters, bakers, electricians, plumbers, grocery store clerks, nurses, doctors, firefighters, the plumbers. I was a bit moody, but now I feel a little bit on that good go, and always encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. Working out, train, exercising has been and will be my medicine and therapy of choice. And you still about that beautiful sky, still financially stressed. And with that Asperger's, it has been difficult to maintain long-term employment, but here I am, got that backpack, sun shining. Thank you to my anonymous friend for gifting me these pants, jeans, 3/4, auctioning them for $1 million to give 50 back. And it was a bit moody, but not that moody as 2 weeks ago. Conquered being depressed and suicidal back in 2017, and somebody's kissing there in the park, and yes, that's some good loving with that queer rainbow, black and white. That's what is good, and that's what I like right there in the park. You're allowed to kiss, and that's sort of the activity, as we play that rainbow, and get some of that good loving there, That's always good to see with all types of love. Lesbian love, gay love, straight love, black and white love. You gotta be 18 plus to come love with me, I'm never gonna turn down a hug, and maybe I'm gonna have some hygiene questions or whatever, but this hygiene is important. But I'll get dirty myself, but get back clean, and those branches fell there. That's a bit dangerous from the storms. We got bigger storms than ever, so we got that climate change on the radar with the DGA, Dancing Goddess Army. We're gonna be able to address some of those questions, It's a pro-labor, love, universal, revolutionary centrist. That's always double trouble. Look at that beautiful car. I just love the color on the car, just with the red, my favorite, but that's kind of a special car right there. And that is something which we got my auntie there with a dog. All my great family here in the North American Collective, always for the 10, the 50, the 3, the 63. Let our empire, People's Democratic Republic, rise. Turn your heads left and right before you cross the street. Always, because you see my auntie on the bike. Gotta take some steps back. Auntie on the bike going her way and going east, and some are going west, some are going north, some are going south, some have changed some diapers in the daycares, and I see it blurred, but I think you see the sirens of the police. You gotta put those slow down, because we're tough times and a lot of emergencies and what have you. But if you see, of course, the police or hear the sirens of the firefighters, the police, slow down and let's see if there's something in the fridge. It's empty. I wish I could fill it up one day. This is something good food, but I wish I could fill it up myself. One day maybe it's gonna fill it up, the whole fridge. And yeah, this is a fridge where you can take some of that food, and if you want, you could take some food with it and get a little bit of food in there, Actually, I thought that my person was gonna drop a little bit of food there, and that's about it with that. And that's with that rock and roll. And always for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, and doctors, the plumbers, the electricians, all those involved in the production, distribution of food. And the firefighters, the plumbers, marching for them all the way up to the mountain, and always getting a little bit of that artistic relevancy, because I'm an N.A.C.W.P, so I'm different myself, and N.A.C.W.Ps, we constitute a little percentage of the population, and it has been a great journey for me to learn and accept my difference, this neurodivergence, which can be quite hard to manage and understand fully, and how we see the world is differently, and gonna go a little bit on it, rock and roll style, because you know how it is with this N.A.C.W.P. It's always rock and roll, it's always geopolitics, it's always sports, fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport, as I encourage all to work out, train, exercise, and just now my only stress is financial. Maybe that's why I'm still moody, but then I gotta, of course, congregate and say to myself always, I paid my rent for the month of September 10th now. Paid my rent, paid my electricity bill. The only bill I still have left to pay is my phone bill. It's gonna come by the end of the month. I have to pay it, because otherwise I'm gonna pay double late fees. I already paid 144 on the late fee and gotta pay on that double again, but that's, you don't want to pay late fees, especially since you're financially stressed. And I just saw before I left a report, supposedly 9 out of 10 Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck, 9 out of 10, and I'm one of those. Although I thought I was gonna get some business. I sent some emails 4 weeks ago. I got a late response because there was some vacation, and you know I love those yellow flowers, so this year quadruple my smile. My smile goes fourfold times 4 when I see those beautiful yellow flowers, and got some more yellow flowers here along the way. See, thank you public workers who embellish the cities, and those are really nice. I really love those colorful ones, but don't leave trash there. See, that's no, don't do that. Like this has to be recycled, you know. Just don't leave trash there. Don't leave that over there like that. I'm gonna have to disinfect my hands now. Because, you know, that's a garden, common garden. Just don't leave the trash there. And of course, we got our brothers and sisters from the public workers in their yellow cars, making sure we're safe. Some of these, they gotta be cut on that, and they gotta be cutting on those. And that's something what you gotta do sometimes, you know, just gotta trim them down. And public workers of Montreal, N.A.C.W.P, Hawk Island. Again, my smile goes wider when I see these beautiful yellows, you know. Red is my favorite color, like the hat I'm wearing, like the underwear I'm wearing, which I'm auctioning for $1 million, the backpack, and of course the case. That is the case, my cell phone case, and I'm thankful I got this case, you know, and gotta be grateful. Sometimes gratitude is great for mental health, you know. And although financially stressed, I had many jobs during COVID in the past years, and I was hoping I was gonna get some more business, but it was delayed. It's delayed until spring. So spring started to be, you know, that delay, of course, in the proposition where it has spring delayed. It's coming, I guess, but it's still summer for me. Next 10 days is still summer, you know. So tomorrow, September 11th, and supposedly I was in high school because I have journals, but as far as my personal memory goes, I have problems. It's like retrograde amnesia. I have trouble remembering, of course, my life prior to February 2014. February 2014, but that's already 11 years and a half ago. 11 years and 6 months ago, almost 7 months ago. Because it's February, March, April, May, June. So it's March, April, May, June, July, August, yeah, September. So that's already categorically on the more than 11 years and a half ago when I say about before February 2014. So I have trouble remembering my life prior to February 2014. Sometimes when it comes back, you know, I don't know if I was a junkie, if I was doing hard drugs before, and if I was consuming alcohol. Sometimes alcoholism, drinking alcohol intensely for a few years, being an alcoholic, after you get rid of it. And I don't drink much, very rarely. You know, maximum per week, I would say it's nowadays it's 2 glasses of wine, cheap affordable wine with dinner, usually on the weekends only. Even 1 glass, 2 glasses, and even that is mostly mixed with other condiments or mixed with some juice sangria. But a red wine, if I can afford it, and split usually 50-50 with my anonymous friend, yeah. But I don't know, maybe before that, February 2014, maybe I was an alcoholic, you know. I just remember I have a very good memory of the past 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years. Then it goes, you know, goes blackout. And sometimes memory comes back. And of course, what can cause memory loss is trauma. I kind of live in PTSD, and I am hyper vigilant, and I'll have plenty of scars on my body. I got the scars to prove it. I remember being attacked by surprise. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was hit in the head a few times and fell on the concrete, hit my head on the concrete, and had a dislocated right shoulder, right arm. And I was bloodied up. I guess tried to take me out, but failed. And I went to the Jewish General Hospital. They put me on some meds. They cracked back my right arm. My right arm was cracked back. My left shoulder was cracked back. And so that was a hardcore event in my life, and among others, you know, just being depressed, suicidal from about summer 2014 to summer 2017. And I'm celebrating today 8 years since I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event made me come out of my depression. And I stopped being suicidal and depressed after I came back from that life experience, which of course was crossing Canada, traversing Canada coast to coast in 2017. So I'm marking 8 years since that event, which made me solidify my esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, North Americans. And I'm not just an artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical, honest, and theorist, but also a mystic. I believe in reincarnations. As a matter of fact, I know some of my reincarnations. Before I go into that, I just want to finalize that before like February 2014, and got those memory troubles. And I remember I used to live in a very moldy place, moldy underground space. It was like a tight prison cell. It wasn't really an official prison cell, but I guess I served my time, and ever since I kind of saved some people. So I guess I balanced those scales, I guess. I guess I served my time and balanced those scales, and I moved from that place. I didn't even have so the kitchen was in the kitchen. So the kitchen was actually in the kitchen was in the room, a small underground room, and then I had, of course, a bathtub. I didn't have a bathtub. I did not have a bathtub. So the bathroom was so where I could do the needs and take a shower was very, very, very small. I didn't even have a bathtub. I didn't even have a bathtub, right? I didn't even have a bathtub. I have one now, thank goddess, and of course I can't afford, massage therapy sessions, which I wish I would, but of course that is just something which I wish I would, because I live a very active lifestyle since 2017. Crossing Canada coast to coast, that was really something really good for me, and that changed my life. And ever since then I've been on the fitness journey. Turn your heads left and right, and I want to check out a little bit and going in the sun. We're going to the mountain in different ways. Sometimes we just gotta mix it up a little bit, but this garden is just so gorgeous here that I always, whenever I pass by here, I always peekaboo a little bit just to gaze at it, because it brings me a little bit of that joy, and just a gorgeous, gorgeous garden right there. So I just love to get close to it, not to intrude on the private. But look, isn't it nice? Just to gaze, it's just very beautiful all the way in the back, and it's related to the other one, so it's nice. And here I'm going to take 4 steps to the left, turn my head to see if nobody's coming. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then my auntie, grandma, fellow family there. Took 4 steps back, and I have experience working with the elderly, a few months in Civilisation. It was not prolonged, but I always do that because I have a wide shoulders, I guess, and a wide backpack, and I'm marching, so I always take a few steps I assess the security and see for my auntie who just passed there with her stroller and her walk support. It's not a stroller, but it's like to support her walking, which she needs to. She could have fell in that. She could have put her foot in there. My fellow, I guess, auntie and our elders, our seniors, citizens who kind of built this whole Canada, in the 20th century, and the United States as well, always for the 10, the 50, and the 63 for the North American Collectif. But her foot could have been there and stuck, and that's something which got to be fixed. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm all about work. It's just that paradoxically, and with Asperger's, it has been more difficult to maintain long-term employments. So just finalizing on where I used to live. I thought I moved in 2016. It ends up it was 2015. It ends up it was in 2015. It ends up it was 2015. And that's 10 years. So I used to live in that moldy place. It was in Côte de Neige, underground basement. I didn't even have a bathtub in the bathtub. I didn't have a bathtub in the bathroom. I did not have a bathtub in the bathroom, so I could not bathe, which I love bathing, so as a matter of fact, I'm gonna bathe, this week, and I don't know when I get back home, but after the mountains, heading to my second home, if I'm gonna take a bath to immerse, maybe, I certainly hope so. Maybe today is that Wednesday, the 10th of September, so it was a moldy place. I left it, I moved. I really had nothing where I moved, I had really nothing. I really had nothing where I moved. I moved there with nothing, and I guess I changed a lot. I'm not resistant to change. I don't resist necessarily change, and what I have as an aspect, I have the ritual routines, kind of have to engage is something that kind of comes like an automatic software update, and I do it daily. Geopolitical analysis, geopolitical revision, geopolitical studies, geopolitical engagement in the world of geopolitics, the universe of geopolitics, along with sports and fitness and rock and roll. You know, I keep a very active lifestyle ever since 2017 when I crossed Canada coast to coast, that event. In 2017 in August, I went to, with my anonymous friend, I got the tickets. We went by bus from Montreal to Vancouver. It took 3.5 days and came back in 2018. Went to in 2017, 2017, we went, of course, in August to Vancouver, spent a few days there. And when I saw the Rockies, I was like, wow, this is a mountainous paradise here in the Rockies, and this mountain on paradise is just so beautiful. I had a revelation, and I established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, and you know, I got that Canada tatted up, that's my Canada. I got that Canada tatted up here, and I don't remember getting that tat. I wrote about it, I think it was 22 years ago. 22 or 23 years ago. That's a long time, eh? More than 2 decades. More than 2 decades. And this one, freedom. And my memory comes from before February 2014. Most of what are written in the journals, in my journal. So I don't know. So I moved from there. Got the N.A.C.W.P 2014. I can remember back as good memory. 11 years. Then it goes blackout. You know, February 2014. I want to go to retrieve my documents. The documents, I guess I missed the deadlines because, you know, with the ASP routines, I set deadlines, and I always miss them on the go. And that's the Hydro-Quebec. It's always go, Hydro-Quebec, go. Thank you to the workers of the past. That's why I can do, of course, this workout to go to the mountain and film, maybe get a few work, and commission for work, for business, because I certainly need the money, you know. Money is finance is to buy, sell, and to do, of course, all the things which we do, integrated in the Appalachian moves, of course, of those little birdies who steer me on, I guess. Here you go, Adrian Hannah Dragon, aka priestess or the goddess. Yeah, I play him. Androgynous, pansexual, also queer. Part of the LGBTQ community. You know, I was many past lives, many incarnations. I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man. And even in the United States, you know, I was born 3 times, and once as a woman, twice as a man, post 76, and I served, of course, in the same United States Armed Forces. When I was born in the United States Armed Forces, I served, of course, in the U.S. Army. 2 different wars, of course. 2 different wars, 156 years apart, and those wars were 156 years apart, you know. And those wars were pretty 156 years apart, and those are pretty beautiful flowers there if you look at them, eh? So, of course, it's just something which we got to do, you know, on the officiating of my victory over depression and suicidal. Is something that affects people with Asperger's and autistics, people with autism, way more than the general population of you. You know, the 99%, of course, where we are. You know, we gotta get it on the go with that to get a little bit of that XYZ. You know, to see it on the go, and that's what it is. You know, there's something which we gotta go doing. You know, and then that's just something what we have to do, you know, in all the situational representations where we are now, concomitant to all the stresses and all the general applications of, I guess, our common civilizational collective, myself just discussing my individual citizen sovereign experiences and all the scars, the trauma, and the joy today. Joyous, financially stressed, but joyous, you know, because freedom is something which gotta be secured, and it's new under the sun. It's the Solomon, and see, this is the public workers gonna need to get that work, see? It's got something we take for granted, eh? See how civilization is a privilege and we got so much work to do. Civilization is a privilege, probably a burst of aqueduct, as I saw in Laval on the street, Adrien, just like my name, you know. Changed my name, officially still gotta pay that paper to change it, but gotta say go, public workers, go. Go, public workers, go. You know, public workers, you know, it's a lot of arbeit which we gotta engage in, and it's lots of work, and we take for granted sometimes the just having running water, electricity. All these are what I call privileges of civilization, all privilege of civilization. Take that pole there, see the electric pole around with thousands, tens of thousands, millions across the North American collectives, which of course were put out on the go, and that is just something what we have, of course, to do, and we have a great privilege here, because it's civilization is a privilege. So just the poles, to transfer the electricity. It's blood, sweat, and tears over the 20th century just to have that. We're not always immersed in all the acknowledgement of the privilege of civilization, which we all share, all of us, under the umbrella. All my brothers and sisters of the collective North American civilization, complex, we all share. And how much work it is also to maintain it, To maintain it, to have achieved it, the North American civilizational complex, to have achieved it and not to maintain it. And I believe its maintenance is best via my public-private partnership, and that is just something which we do, and we appellate on the constituencies, and sometimes which we gotta get to work, as a philosopher, artist, athlete, and mystic, and independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist, developing strategies for the North American collective, mostly for NATO, and as well for world peace. But for now, I guess world peace is gonna be on the pedal, on the wax bone a little bit for that go, and that is something which we got, to get a little bit of that rock and roll, to get it on that dual aspect of Canada and United States, because that's how we're gonna get. So just finalizing on where I used to live. I used to live still on the island of Montreal. I don't know how many years I lived there, in that underground moldy basement. I didn't even have a bathtub, in the bathroom was so small, smaller than even a prison cell. It was like a prison cell, really, from my memory I can remember. But I don't know how many years I spent there, and if I was an alcoholic, if I was doing drugs, and just got those blackouts of memory. But I have a good memory, very good memory. But mostly of the past 8, 9, 10, and 11, and prior to February 2014. Before February 2014 is who was I and what was I doing? And I know I had a high school diploma. The problem with Aspies, I went to some college. The problem with people like myself who have Asperger's, HFA, on the spectrum, is that we tend to have a high dropout rate from high school, universities, and for many years, many different citizens have told me, my anonymous friend, others have told me, diagnosed me unofficially, and who have experience with people with autism, who have experience with people who are different, who have experience with people who are neurodivergent, have experience in the healthcare system, turn your head left and right before you cross the street, who I've been told many times, I've been diagnosed kind of. And the ASPI population, of which I am part as an individual sovereign citizen, is not a lot, It's 0.44%, but only half are officially diagnosed, half, 50%. So that means that the total population finds itself at around 0.88, 0.44 times 2, it's around 0.88, so it's still less than 1%, It's still less than 1%. It's still less than 1%. It's still less than 1%. So you're the 99%, and we gotta build those bridges. We gotta build bridges. Whether we build small bridges, medium bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges. Within these 4 categories, just like when you order a cup of coffee, somebody's ordering different sizes of cup of coffee now, or fries, small coffee or fry, medium coffee or fry, large coffee or fry, extra large. Those are the bridges which we have to build, sometimes with different neurotypicals, and of course between us neurotypicals and neurodivergence, between us neurotypicals and you neurodivergence, between us neurotypicals and you neurodivergence. Those are what we gotta build. Between you and us, we have to build those bridges. We have to build those bridges. Because I don't have antagonistic, resentful, negative, bad volition or feelings for you, the neurotypicals. But where we have to draw the line, myself as an Aspie have to draw the line, and all Aspies together as a collective community, that Asperger's is not evil. Beautiful yellow flowers, love it, LOVE. We are not, Asperger's is not bad, it's not negative, it's not evil, it's not malicious. It's not negative in any way. It's different. It's different. We're different. We think differently. We see the world differently and the causes of Asperger's are not, well, it's inconclusive. It could be part hereditary, biological, hereditary traits, hereditary characteristics due to the hereditary, or it could be that it is a combination of genetic, that is hereditary, or environmental factors, or both. And there's no medication because it's not an illness. So one has to, of course, just what one has to do is, of course, to work on the traits, work on the characteristics, and that is just what one has to do. As an aspect to build those bridges and to work together, to work together. So those are the characteristics and the traits. I don't use the word symptom, and I don't like it being used because symptom is more for an illness, a malady, sickness, while Asperger's is not. It's the way we see the world is differently. We process information differently. And yes, we have certain difficulties in social interactions, and we have special routines and special interests, aka obsessive interest, although using the word obsessive doesn't render justice to myself as an aspect, because when I'm involved in studying, learning, and analyzing the world of geopolitics on a daily basis, sometimes for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, just without doing anything else, that's for me, it's not really an obsession, it is part of me, think about it like a software, I'm a hardware is the body, and then, how do you invest? It's by working out, training, and active lifestyle. For me, I recommend it, and of course the other is, of course, the software usually revolves around, for me, as creating rock and roll and working out, training, exercising. Dancing is my favorite sport and fitness activity, although I love all sports activities, all fitness activities, all sports activities. So see, now I got out of the way because my fellow cousin came, and of course for his security, safety, look at that. Of course, that is something where of course we have to say, and that is just something what we have to do, all the spheres of the community information where we are now. So that is just where we are, and that's why I got out of the way. So I'm gonna take 4 steps to the left and then back to the right because she was carrying, and I am assuming there was somebody in the carriage, and I guess it's safer, rather than just go on the side. Just like sometimes I just make that effort, to just get out of the way for others. It is something which it's usually a trait which I engage in, because in the public we got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations which I would have not had underneath, of course, myself. I would not have underneath myself, I would have had not underneath. If I would have stayed home, I would have not had the same duties and obligations and responsibilities. And I mean, we all have it when we step outside, right? We have added responsibilities and duties and obligations. And one of the difficulties, of course, where we are, of course, engaged is, of course, the materialization of this knowledge that, of course, this difference is not bad, it's not negative, it's not evil, it's not negative, it's not malicious. It is different, but not evil, bad, negative, or malicious. That's where we have to draw the line of as aspies, myself as an individual aspie. And of course, it's not a, where's the crow? Crow said crow 4 times. Yes. Yes. So that's just what it is. Look at that beautiful sun hitting the trees. So this is what I have to live with. And I've been kind of diagnosed though by different individuals for like maybe 9 years now. 9 years from now, around 2016, I guess. 2016, yeah, around that time, by several individuals and citizens. And I did not want to accept it because it's a stigma, That was another big pothole, gotta be fixed. It's still a stigma. There's been a lot of work, especially in the 21st century. There's been a lot of stigma. And a lot of demystification has been achieved in the past years as well, vis-a-vis Asperger's. More in the 21st century. So, I did not want to accept it, I did not want to accept it, I did not want to accept it. I said, no. But then, during COVID, about 3.5 years ago, maybe more, around 44 months, maybe around, I said, yeah, I am an aspie. That makes sense why I lose my jobs, why I can't keep friends long term, why I was depressed, why I was suicidal, why I see the world differently, and when I have these ritualized routines, and why, of course, these special interests preoccupy most of my time. Preoccupy most of my time. Preoccupy most of my times. Most of my times are involved, of course, around the studying the analysis of geopolitics, rock and roll, and sports and fitness, that holy trinity. And I can have other fourth dimension, I lust, I'm not sexually frustrated. I guess if I would be, I would discuss it. I'm not. But if you're black or white or black, man or woman, rainbow, play that queer, 50-50, androgynous, pansexual. Friends with benefits only, 18 plus though. You gotta be an adult. I'm gonna card you just like when you go buy some liquor, go to a club, or get here that cannabis. We legalized it back in 2019. Cannabis was legalized back in 2019. Cannabis, was legalized back in 2019, so a long time ago. Not that long, really, but I was diagnosed for many years by several individuals. So yeah, I am an N.A.C.W.P and I have to live with it, and we have to build bridges. I have my strengths and weaknesses, and I gotta thank my anonymous friend for gifting me a book, especially a book which was rented 4 times. That was a great one, and I learned my own vulnerabilities, and generally asked me how we can be vulnerable because of these social difficulties, and we don't understand or get certain social protocols, like personal space, when to speak, when not to speak, or what the small talk, for example. Small talk, of course, can be difficult. Small talk can be more difficult for Aspies. We can engage in a small talk, but it can be more difficult, So I have trouble in those areas. We have trouble in the way we communicate socially. The mannerisms can be a bit weird, awkward, and we have, like I said, our strengths, we have our weaknesses, and we have, of course, all our powers as well. And it's something which we gotta get doing with that, and that's something which I have to work on, the characteristics, because of course there's no medication. I just have to work on that, and we gotta get it on that work too to get it done. And it's something which, of course, I'm always open to having friends with benefits, and sometimes where we gotta get doing on that left and right and Z, and in the ABCD and the 1, 2, 3, 4, always with the neurotypicals to build bridges constantly and make an effort. The problems we have, I'm not gonna have to discuss the problems we have, because we do, we have 3 main problems. Generally, all Aspies, we have usually 3 main problems which affect us, and of course more or less, but generally we have these 3 problems which Aspies encounter due to our difference, our lack of the social skills. Not necessarily that we lack certain social knowledge and this kind of skills, kind of knowing when to speak, when not to speak, when a person is interested. Personal space also, and we might have weird, awkward mannerisms such as stimming, repetition, ekalela. Ekalela is repeating the words, exactly the words verbatim per verbatim. That's Latin for word what another person said, or inspecting things close. For example, I'm going to show you the concrete example, and I've been doing this for years. I would take an object, and for like 44 seconds, 45 a minute, I would inspect it and look at it very closely to the face. Kind of like inspection of it, and look at numbers and details written. Sometimes you see the number, for example, on the top small on certain labels of cans or or bottles. You might see the number 1984. But that number is maybe something which has to be with the industry classification, with where it was, maybe even where it was produced, where it was bottled. The area. It could be that the first 2 digits represent the state, or the plant, or the whole number represents the factory. The factory where it was put on the assembly line, and then that number is on all those products which were assembled on that assembly line. So it might be an inner industry knowledge. Insider knowledge, so maybe only a few know. You check on products, you're gonna see those numbers exist on many products. They're like, yeah, what are those small numbers there at the bottom that sometimes you gotta take a magnifying glass to see? Just like the Aspie brain mutations are not outwardly protruding outside of the brain, but they're internal, right? They're at the microscopic nano level, internal, and you cannot visually see them with the naked eye. Those variations of the brain at a certain microscopic level, right? So that's why my anonymous friend, it makes sense. He say, what are you doing with the object so close? So That's just inspecting those little weird, awkward, bizarre, strange
I think it's actually on.
manifestations of Asperger's. And see my aunties there. I paused because I assessed the security, and I didn't want to bump into them with my big backpack, and that's just what I did there for a few seconds, to just make sure that they cross safely and I cross safely, because I'm in the public, so I have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, which I don't have here if I would have stayed home. And this is kind of where it marks. This is kind of where my new neighborhood begins here, and when I cross on that side is my old neighborhood. Nothing that I will to go back to. I survived COVID in February 2020. I had COVID between February 2020 and March 2020. It was like death, pestilence, and disease. I thought I was gonna die, and I got triple vaxxed, 3 vaccines. I get 3 vaccines, and I urge all to keep the protocols, hygienic protocols of COVID, washing their hands, disinfecting, open carry my disinfectant, because sometimes we touch products, We touch products, we get those germs, that bacteria, those microbes, and it's super important. See, that's the Hydro-Quebec truck. We got 63 dams, interestingly enough. Always for the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3, and it's always go Hydro-Quebec, go. I wish I could get some songs, and see, there's a little bit of security, and we got to get that flock, and Dragon New 911, Dragon Army Total Integrated Protocol for Total Security, Total Service, Total Defense across the North American Collective, across the 10, the 50, and the 3 for Total SSD, Security, Service, and Defense. What I'm referring to is the new 911 Dragon Integrated North American Collective Protocols, whence we need to fuse the RCMP and the FBI and Canada and the United States into the 63 Imperial Democratic Complex for Total Security, Total Service, Total Defense, by, of course, the manufacturing, of course, of a complex of total integrated public-private partnership for total security, total service, total defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, in the general plateau where we are, of course, now. I think what I'm gonna do is, I know, I have an idea, because the sun will start there, so I'm gonna go around about it like that, because I want to get as much sun as I can. So in order to get as much sun as I can, if I go like that on the side, then I'll be able to circumvent and kind of go riding into the sun and not cross, or cross a bit in my own neighborhood, because there's nothing that I will to go back to really, but I want to get some sun, so I'm on the shade, and then when I'll go back on the other way, then I'm gonna get more sun that way. So that's what I'm gonna do, and that's that rock and roll. So truckers, down there's the highways, and always saluting the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the firefighters, public workers, those bus drivers. We got tough economic, financial, commercial situations. Just before I left, I was checking a video who stated that 9 out of 10, that's 90%, 9 out of 10 Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. I never heard anything like this before, and even from my research of the past, of course, if you check out my, of course, history, you check out that my history, of course, dates to, if I check what I rented, what I loaned from the library from 5 years, 2014 to 2019, I bet you that it's 90% has to do in some way with geopolitics, whether history, religion, statistics, finance, economics, because all those are part of geopolitics, which is my special interest, and I am an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst. We're going to finalize on Asperger's, and we're going to get into that rock and roll hardcore style, Dragonesque, and yours truly. Nobody's born a dragon, not even myself. Pledge your allegiance to our family, or friends with benefits only. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. You're black, you're white, you're a man, you're a woman. You want to get dirty, get back clean, do some pleasure, purpose, business. Always open, and I'm queer, androgynous, pansexual. I like that BDSM switch with consent and all sorts of scenarios, where we can play and have fun. Otherwise, just don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. I paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, paid my rent, paid my electricity bill as well. My only bill to pay is the phone, My only bill to pay is the phone, and that's how we gotta go do that rock and roll with that. And I live with my scars, I live with financial stress at the moment. I'm always open. I'm rich though in kisses, got those trillions of kisses, credited from the forgotten goddess, GODDSS. Trillions of kisses credited from the forgotten goddess. Trillions of kisses credited from the forgotten goddess. I did say GODDESS. Goddess, goddess, goddess. Who wants some? You're black, white, or rainbow. And if you're pledge your allegiance to our family, whether you're black, you're rainbow, and whatever else here in the North America, and all who come to join us here. We get that rock and roll, and we gotta get that drill for the left, for the right, for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, the electricians. How many trucks now across the North America Collective? We gotta get a little bit of that left and the right and the center, pro-labor and love, universal revolutionary centrist, and that's what I gotta get doing with that, you know, and that's something what we have to drill. So now, of course, I'm going to finalize on Asperger's. So Asperger's, again, it's not a disease, not a disease, and that's what it is with that, and then that's what it is for the goal with that, and that's what it is for now, you know, and then you got to get it on that drill, and you got to get on that rock and roll, you know, so that's just something that you do, and something that I do, and something that we do together, and that's just something which you have to do together, and as individuals, and as a collective, to work on building those bridges like that one. That's what I was affirming. I was discussing building bridges like that bridge. What are small bridges, medium bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges. Whatever type of bridges we build, small, medium, extra large, large, small, medium, extra large, large. We gotta build them. Like I said, because I don't have antagonistic feelings, resentful feelings towards you, the majority of the population, the neurotypicals. I don't, you know, I am who I am, and I have a lot of things to bring to the table. How about you? Building my new table, I guess the one that I got by work, and it's got that red, kind of looks like a circus table. You know. It looks like a circus table. It's good to go. I just gotta clean it, rub it some more, you know, some more cleaning tomorrow, September 11th, doing that commemoration, and now saluting, you know, the truckers on the road. I guess it's that rush hour, you know, you gotta get some of that rush, and everybody's going back home or starting their day and going to work, maybe night shift, you know, overnight and during the day, and it's 24/7 H.A.W.K. Hawk Island. And just to finalize on Asperger's, we have three main problems that affect us Aspies in a major way. Is the lack of friends. We have trouble maintaining long-term friendships. So maintaining long-term friendships. The maintenance, you know, maintaining long-term friendship is a problem. So maintaining long-term friends is an issue. My solution is simple, straightforward. Friends with benefits only, or support the dream, pledge your allegiance, thou art family, pledge your allegiance, thou art family, pledge your allegiance, thou art family, pledge your allegiance, thou art family. And that's just how we rock and roll with that, and that is just how I gotta go to the washroom now, because I'm gonna head on to the washroom. I hope it's open there, because I gotta go. So then we're gonna go towards the sun, and that's what we're gonna be doing and affirming, and that's what we're gonna turn it on in the sun and go to the mountain and head back home. You know, that's a routine which has been so for years and years, you know, marching for hours every day and going to the mountain, going to the river by the city, but mostly to the mountain, you know. It's mostly to the mountain, my second home, Mount Royal. And the other problem for Aspies is very problematic. High depression and suicidal rates, you know. High depression and suicidal rates. So the depression and suicidal rate is very high, you know. The depression and suicidal rates are very high, 9 times higher, you know. 9 times higher. What? No. Somebody's making love there. That's good. Making love, hugging, looking at the youth. I guess that's good, you know. Good to go. That's just what I gotta get doing with that, and that's just what I gotta get doing, you know. And that's just gotta be rock and rolling with that, you know. And just gotta be doing it, you know. The youth are happy. I'm happy. You know, the youth are happy. I'm happy. And they just wanna be doing it now, you know. And they just have to be doing on that and to go and therefore is it and crossing the street prudently. You see, that's of course the river. That's of course the river. The river there, you know. See the river, you know. The river. See the river? That's where we were yesterday. You can see even the river because now we're really on the mountain now. We're kind of beginning on the westmost part of the mountain, as you can see, it goes down. So here we go up, and there's the three-peak mountain system, you know, the three-peak mountain system, the three-peak mountain system, you know, the three-peak mountain system, Mount Royal proper. So the lack of friends and high depression and suicidal rate. The depression and suicidal rate is 9 times higher, and I lived it. I almost took my life. I was depressed, suicidal. And the third problem, in whatever order you put them, of course, it could be. It is in different orders, but this is another problem. Here it is, which I live in now. And I had many jobs, is the unemployment. Unemployment. You know, for Aspies, although we're less than 1%, only 0.44 are officially diagnosed, but it's double the number. And of course that is of course something which we have, of course, to get it on the go, and that is just something which we got, you know. So that is the high unemployment rates. It's 80+%. So that's that's 11 times higher than for you neurotypicals. 11 times higher. So for every one of you who constitute the majority, there's 11 people with Asperger's who are unemployed. It's keeping the jobs that's the problem. Keeping them. It says since 1984. So keeping them. Keeping the jobs. Keeping the jobs is problematic. Long term, 80%, 80+% of Aspies are unemployed. Oh, I forgot to bring here you can put the electronics, see? Electronics goes there, small electronics for recycling. Where a proper recycling gotta be put here. So next time I'm gonna bring in the batteries. Because you don't throw those in the garbage here, we gotta do our individual part. If we don't do our individual part, then we don't do it for the collective, you know. Thinking blah 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 environment. But I saw a lot of people don't do it. So here we're gonna pause and we're gonna go in the washroom. Gotta work together. Turn off the lights, because that's what it says there, to turn it off. And here we're gonna get a little bottle of water. So see, some are made in Canada, made in USA, toilet, North American toilet, Canada, United States joint. And wash your hands, because that's what I did. I washed my hands and disinfected the hands, you know, with that soap. Super important, because I see a lot of people don't, but it's super important for us to do so, eh? You know, the microbes and bacteria and germs that do exist. And here we're gonna get a little bit of that water, you know, just hydrate a bit and put it one to go, and off to the mountain we go in the sun round about it. This is good water. Thank you. Oh yeah, that's it, and that's a good hydration. There we go. Backpack, and off we go. Auctioning the backpack, the hat, the underwear, the pants, the socks, the hat, the jeans, $1 million each. And that's $7 million for each item that I'm wearing. Gonna give 50%, that $3.5 million to my anonymous friend. And rock and roll, see I love this done. And you get to save a little bit of those bottle safes. He says $16.99, bottle saved. And you know, sometimes you just gotta get down there, rock and roll with it. And that's just what it says there. You can't really see the number because of how the lights are, but interjectionally, that's the number 16. See, $16.99, 16. Supposedly those bottles were saved there. Bottles saved. Rock and roll. So finishing on Asperger's, it's a neurological mental divergent condition. It makes us Aspies predisposed to special interests, and again the problems we Aspies have. And I made many friends, especially in the queer community, LGBTQ plus community, but lost them, lost most of them. I have some friends online, but I've been a few weeks out of that Facebook because I had it on my old phone, and now my old phone died, and I gotta reshuffle it, do a new Facebook account, changing my name officially, my official change name, and Adrian Hana Dragon, Instagram, and do a little bit of rap, rock and roll, and yeah, finishing on Aspies. I see you have three main problems, and lack of friends. That's right, it's friends with benefits only from now on. Gonna see if I can pass through here. Friends with benefits only from now on, and lack of employment, where not necessarily lack that we find employment, it's just keeping the employment, Gotta salute the firefighters on them, and you get a little bit of that exhaust on the go, and that's just something where we are, on that left or right, and that's just something where we gotta get doing with that, and it's always on that rock and roll side, and that's something where we got, we got a little bit of those red flowers there. Red flowers, that's nice. On the corner there, they got those red flowers, and that's what we got, that's something what we got, that is something what we got. Those red flowers is always something nice, and to get acknowledged, and that's just the difference, and I don't like violence myself, but I'm very hyper vigilant, very hyper vigilant. My hypervigilance is those flashes of trauma, and those flashes of trauma, I guess, having survived a surprise attack and those scars, I'm always hypervigilant, always hypervigilant. So that hypervigilant, of course, is kind of ingrained, innate, but I'm somebody who I don't like violence, I just don't like it. I can be intense. Aspies usually we can be very intense, hyper focused, super intense, super hyper focused, concentrated. But we don't. Personally, I don't like violence. I guess, you have a way to channel aggression and violence. You have sports, You have sports. You have fitness. You can put gloves, You can box, You can boxing. 1, 2, 3, 4 rocks there in the corner of different size shapes. And see how my brain now works? I was trying to do a little bit of area and surface calculation. You need more information to do that, but that was just kind of Aspie brains, how are different from the neurotypical brains, that sometimes we look at things and we might see a little bit of mathematics. For example, here, the perimeter or the circumference, the area. Whenever I walk, sometimes I try to calculate the perimeter. Perimeter, you add the 4 sides. Well, of course, area you have to multiply. And not all Aspies, by the way, people with Asperger's are good in computers, It's about 20%. But considering that it's a small amount, 1/5 is still disproportionate from the neurotypicals. Yes, there's a disproportion from the neurotypical population of people with Asperger's who excel in computer science. And in computer science they do excel. It is a high, of course, percentage. Nonetheless, more than 20%, 1 out of 5, but not all. My special interest in a parallel life It is the year of darkness, 8th of November, 2029, you know, and that's where I build supercomputers, microchips, satellites, microchips coding, and sunsats, satellites orbiting the Earth, and supercomputers with that. So in that parallel life, in the year of darkness, it is November 8th, 2029. That's where I build supercomputers, satellites, microchips. Yeah, in this life, I'm an artist athlete. I write rock and roll songs and geopolitics. That's my special interest, and that's what I do on a daily basis and have done for many, many years. Of course, I will discuss it because it's part of the reason for me doing these marches, and we're gonna get into it. And just want to finalize on my fellow Aspies. Some require more support than others. I don't require much support myself, just minimal support in my case. So in my case, the support that I require minimal, just with things around the house, you know, to be done. That's why I hope I'm gonna propose a third time. I guess October 31st is the last of this year's the last and deadline. The last deadline for me to propose, you know. The last deadline for me to propose, October 31st, you know. The last deadline for me to propose is gonna be October 31st of this year. And I already proposed twice. It's gonna be a special marriage, you know. If I do get a yes, I guess I'm gonna bite in it. Supposedly the urban legend goes just like George Biden. I would have voted for Biden. Supposedly he proposed 7 times. 6 times he got a no. 7 times he got a yes. Imagine the 7 times he proposed. 6 times he got a no. He got a no as an answer from Joe Biden 6 times, and then only the 7th, or so the urban legend myth goes. I gotta hear it from him personally, you know. So I gotta hear it from him, you know. So that's something which we got, you know, to get acknowledgement before I get it on the go. Spectrum, is that for Aspies? I'm still waiting for. I did follow-ups for years and years and years, but I don't think so. Maybe. Well, financially I'm stressed, even though I wanted to go check at a dermatologist also, you know, but it cost $300 to check my scars, and on my little clit, dick, androgynous sometimes goes rocket, bless goddess on that rocket. But I got that big patch of, it might be eczema or psoriasis because it itches. And I went about 9 years ago, I went to check STD, sexually transmitted disease, if it was an STD, and I got tested. So it's blood, it's not STD. So but dermatologist, all the prices for dermatologist consultation is $300 Canadian for one consultation. So wow, I don't have that kind of money at the moment to go, you know, for the consultation of the dermatologist. So my only impediment now really is monetary, financial, economic, you know. Besides that, is something which, you know, I don't have other issues really. I get moody, I get a bit horny, I have a healthy, I'm gonna check if nobody's too young for me to say, but with that, you know, now listening to the South Park, which I don't listen to, I just popped on my feed once and I listened for a little bit of 4 different clips from 4 different episodes, and I say, yeah, I do masturbate, you know, regular masturbation, and as part of healthcare, I guess, mental health, healthy masturbation, and I'm part of the queer community, whatever, and neurodivergent. It's nothing that I hide, eh? I've been in the open, out of the closet myself since I can remember. I don't know, before 2014, February, maybe I wasn't. And that's why maybe I was drinking, maybe I was doing drugs, and I was attacked by surprise because of my difference. I just don't know why I was attacked by surprise, I survived that vicious surprise attack or XYZ. But what I do know is the past years, especially since coming out of my depression, and now we're gonna finish on Asperger's, the 3 main problems, which it is for that, is something which I gotta get doing like that. So of course the finishing on the input is of course the dynamics of the emergency of that we have now, is of course to appropriate all the dynamics where we live with now. Of course that I, with this aspiness, has been a problematic, but it's not just a problem for me, it's for Aspies generally. It's 80% of the Aspie community is unemployed. So as tiny as the community we are, you realize how the unemployment level is super high 4 out of 5, 10, 8 out of 10. It's more than 80% in some cases. It's unacceptable. That's 11 times higher than the majority of the population. 11 times higher. 11 times higher. Oh, beautiful sun. Gotta turn my... That quadruples my smile right there, seeing the couple whole hands, you know, and that's just something which I gotta be seeing, you know. Gotta be seeing with that, and that's just something which I love to see, man, you know. Quadruples my hand, man, you know. It gives me some hope, you know. For the free world, man. Yeah. So I like to see. Now that's what makes me happy, man. Seeing people hold hands like that in the public, you know. That gives me hope, you know. There's hope for the free world, eh? It ain't all about the money, eh, Wall Street? Stay away from me. It ain't all about the money, eh? It ain't all about the money, you know? Money comes and goes, I guess. You buy, you spend it, you print it in the central bank, see? And that always gives me a little bit of that hope, yeah, man. That's what it is, man, you know? So that's just something where we have to be, you know? It's just something where we have to go, you know? And yeah, it's 4 couples always now, you know? 4 couples always. I saw 4 couples now, and that gives me hope, and that's gonna be doing on that go, man, you know? And beautiful sunset. I'm gonna of course, go to my second. I'm not gonna pass by my own neighborhood, you know. I'm not gonna pass by my own neighborhood, you know, because there's nothing really that I will to go back to. But of course, I gotta live for today and have hope for tomorrow, because I just saw people holding hands, loving, kissing, and that quadruples my smile, and that gives me hope. Because otherwise, what are we fighting for now? You know, just if I live here and you live there, and us, we live here in the North American Collective, and it's something which we, of course, have, of course, to do with the appellation and the XYZ factors and factorials where we are now today. That somebody's making love in the free world, holding hands, kissing, and Wall Street give $1 million. You know, if you made $1 million, you know, that's what it is now, and that's a blessing, man. You know, black, white, or rainbow, and that's just how we are. Sometimes we have these different energies which we have to work together. Like I said, I don't like violence. I just don't like violence at all. I am hyper vigilant, and I will defend myself, you know, and I will defend myself. Definitely defend myself, you know. Definitely defend, you know. And that's just how we go. Right to self-defense across the empire. The 63 will be, you know. Even, of course, financing self-defense, you know, classes could be something, you know, which we could, of course, explore, you know. Financing self-defense classes could be something which we could explore, and something which we could work together. See here, this is where my own neighborhood begins, right at the line here. Right at the line. Right at the sunset, you see. So kind of here is where it delineates. So the delineation here. The delineation here of my own neighborhood kind of commences. I guess I could cross into the side, or that's where my own neighborhood kind of begins, in that part. So it's kind of separates. So maybe not, because there's not much sun. I was gonna go into the sun, but it doesn't seem to be much sun anyway. So here's my new neighborhood there, and here's at the corner of my own neighborhood. So there's nothing that I will to go back to. As far as the sun goes, I guess I missed it because I went to the washroom, but I'm not gonna miss it tomorrow. I didn't miss it fully. I have a little bit on it, so let's go up on the boulevard, and we're gonna finish on Asperger's. The problems with Aspies is, of course, the lack of employment. You know? The lack of employment. So it's not necessarily Aspies don't get employed. It's just that it doesn't last because we're different. Look at our cool bike. We're different, right? So we communicate differently. We communicate differently, in different manner of communication and social interaction can be more difficult for us, you know. So this, of course, difficulty is expressive in all the manners where we are inclusive. To include and to open up about Asperger's and autism is something which we have to, because the workplaces and workspaces are mostly concocted for neurotypicals, you know. So for the neurotypical world is where most spaces are concocted and fabricated, aligned. For the neurotypical world is something which we got to get doing on that, and that is just something that we are now to be transmissive about, and that's how I transpose and clear up the misinformation sometimes, you know, the misinformation sometimes about Asperger's, because it's not an illness, it's not a disease, it's not an illness, it's not a disease, and just have to live with it, you know, just have to live with it. So it's living with it, you know, it's living and managing the characteristics. They're not symptoms, right? You can't say symptoms, because it's not a symptom like in a malady, in an illness, mental or otherwise, ailments, physical ailments. And of course, you have to manage the characteristics. And three main problems: lack of friends, high unemployment, and of course, high suicidal and depression rate. So that is it for me, for Asperger's, on my personal. Now we're gonna say some gratitude, and we're gonna jump into geopolitics, because that's what I do. That's what I delayed my walk 3 hours today, because there were so many geopolitical events which I had to study, learn, and meditate about. That, of course, it preoccupied me, and I drank a coffee, and then from that coffee I went on to do a little bit of meditation and eat and shower. Now, geopolitics. Leave the baggage at the door. Wow. Leave the baggage at the door. If you're not interested in geopolitics, learning, exchanging information, theorizing, philosophizing, doing analysis, or finding solutions, strategies for the North American collective, such as the rehabilitation of the North American population, whether financial, social, mental, or otherwise correctional, you have, of course, to set up on that information and the line what we have, of course, to be communicative about. So, back, of course, to geopolitics. Today, September 10th. Before, we're gonna go back in time. And just to say, what is geopolitics? Several definitions, brief ones, small ones. It is the study, the analysis, interpretation of political relations, philosophies, political entities, such as the Canadian Dominion, the United States of America, the State of Israel, Taiwan, China, all the more than 156 nation states which exist, Indonesia, etc., and organizations and regions, and everything to do with the interaction between geography. Geopolitics comes from the Greek word geos, a region, a place, a location. Geos, from Gaia, I guess, originally. Geos. And politics, politicus from polity. A polity was, from politics, was the original nation state. A governance, a way of governance. So a way of governance, that is governs the politics of a region, in particular a region. So that is geopolitics. It has a more in-depth definition. So it's the study, the analysis, interpretation, or even developing strategies, geopolitical strategies, such as mine, titled the Bipolar Geopolitical Strategy for Total BDD, Benevolent Dominance and Dominion of the World, via fusing Canada, United States into the Imperial Democratic Republican complex, via the implementation of the DRT theory. The DRT theory. Of the DRT theory. What does that say? Oh, I know that a bit of information about TIDAN, Titan. Yeah, I think it's where the Titan building where I used to go for a few years to do some artistic work. And of course, with Asperger's, has been more difficult, and I didn't have the $500, you know, to keep the literary agent. And see this BDD, benevolence, dominance, and dominion. Benevolence, dominance, and dominion. That is what it is with that, and that is something when I gotta see those lovers hold hands. And that strategy, the bipolar strategy for total BDD, not to be confused with bipolarity as in the psychiatric psychological sense, but merely a BDD theory, benevolent dominance and dominion theory, that has to do with geopolitics. So it has nothing to do with psychiatry or psychology when I make a reference to the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world via the fusion of Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican Democratic Complex, via implementation of my trinity of theories such as the DRT, lateral fusion theory, CIT, citizen integration theory, and the DFT, democratic fusion theory. Those three, by the LOVE. So that is just something which we have to do. Love this garden here. We're gonna build a forgotten goddess temple, and we're gonna have flowers like this. Gorgeous, 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 colorful. So that strategy, so geopolitical strategy, has nothing to do with, of course, psychiatry, with psychology. I know there's the bipolar complex, psychiatric psychological complex, but that has nothing to do with, in that sense, of course, of the bipolar. It has nothing to do with that, right? Has nothing to do with that at all. So that is just what we have, of course, to understand each other in the complex where we are now, to getting on the drill and manifest here in the sphere, the implementation of the theories where we are now, to getting on that go and that, and that's something what we have to do, together with where we are, we got all that left and the right, and all the circumcision where we are now, and the vision of the spheres where we are now, to be circumpollated and circumvisioned about all the dynamics where we are. Gotta salute the construction workers, and all the dynamic of this plex, to get it done all the way up like that. And that is something which we have, of course, to do, and to manage to salute. You gotta salute, I gotta salute, of course, all the ordinances where we are now, the ordinary position, of course, of all the fabrications of this construction plateau that it took brains and muscle, to adhere to, and of course to do in the circumspection of this building. Always gotta salute construction workers, eh? That is just something where we have to salute, because I will to build a 4, and before I proceed in geopolitics, I guess I might as well dwell into the building of the 4, because that is just something which we have, of course, to build, building of the 4 composition, and that is just something where we have, of course, to act now in all the spheres. My will to build a 4, with your support, help, and my trillions of kisses, is, of course, the building of the Imperial People's Coliseum. Look at that big pothole there. The wheel goes in that, or a motorcycle, that's a danger zone. Got to be a lot of work to be done across the North American Collective with brains and muscle, blah, 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 blah. Put some steps, put some massage therapy sessions, put some finance, that's what money does, blah, 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 blah. And we got to get it on the go. And, of course, always got to be grateful for today and to live with a hope for tomorrow, with a hope for tomorrow as I do. Look at the beautiful sky, and I already saw several citizens, couples today holding hands, which always gives me a little bit of that joy, always gives a little bit of that joy and hope, H-O-P-E, when I see that, that's always hope for me, because I love and I will to be loved. And I ask to be loved with my love, It's a bit black and white and rainbow with that snake and hawk in between the lion and the Black Panther, and whatever the case may be. Just not just those 4 animals, because there's lots of beauty in all the flora, fauna, and spiders, and whatever, just to see a bit of that animalistic, beastly love, lustful love, beastly, physical. And I am a very physical being. Although I'm a mystic. I don't make pretense, and I'm high above the clouds, spiritually floating like a hawk. Although the hawk, H-A-W-K, is my totem bird, and I have more questions than answers, but I do goddess it. And the goddess spit on me and called me cuckold. So I said, yes, I'm going to be the greatest cuckold in the universe for the goddess. If so, I am, inclined to be. And that is the goddess who credited me, of course, 718 trillions of kisses, and she doesn't need me to build her, nor you, nor us to build her a temple, because she's got the pyramids, tombs and temples still standing. Bury me with Papa Crowley. A third of me up in New Jersey. A third of me up in the city of the pyramids, a third of me up in Mount Royal, or every 11 years rotate me from Mount Royal to Hampstead, to Hampton, Hampton, New Jersey, and 11 years to the pyramids in Cairo, Egypt, the city of the pyramids, and of course every 11 years 4 times bring me back to rotation, and gotta find my birth certificate. I guess I died here, I'm being reborn here. I guess I will to die on the mountain, I guess. Not sure where I was born, but don't got that birth certificate. I still gonna find it probably by 31st of October. Maybe it's in a book somewhere. Maybe it's in a book. I have a high school diploma. I have documents from the 90s from here, Canada. Maybe I was born in the city of the pyramids. Maybe I was born in Transylvania. Or maybe I was born in Haifa. Maybe I was born here, Montreal, or Washington D.C. from as I know, Doesn't matter. What matters is most of the past years, and that's the dream, the Imperial Republican Democratic dream of yours truly's philosopher, artist, athlete, and my will, I guess, and our will, and perfect harmony, and back to geopolitics, because that's what I know most. I do know my rock and roll, and I do rock and roll on a daily. Create rock and roll songs as an artist, athlete, and dancing is my favorite sport, although I love that. Gridiron, North American football, go Niners, please. NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, donate a little bit of those tickets, give some tickets for the free poor public workers, and reduce the costs and finance some women's sports leagues, please. The PVHL, Professional Women's Hockey League, I would buy definitely tickets to the whole season here, the new Victoire in Montreal. It's like the original 6, and I'm a bit disappointed because last year's highest grossing athletes out of the Forbes top 50, from number 1 to number 50, there was not even one woman on the list. From number 1 to number 50, not even one woman was. So all top 50 paid athletes were men. All top 50, from the number 1 most paid, I think it was Ronaldo, to the last one. I think we had some of the football, lots of NFL players, and then NBA players, and then soccer players such as Ronaldo, Messi were among the top 5 and top 10. Many soccer players, I think 4 out of the top 10 were of course soccer players, mostly playing in Europe and Saudi Arabia, the Middle East. But of course not even one was a woman. From number 1 to number 50, out of the 50 you would have think that at least one woman makes a few million. No, in 2024 there was not even one woman. So yeah, and you know why they didn't let Michael Sam play in the NFL, eh? Should have at least played one game. Let him try. 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, 4 games. I would have said, okay, you're going to get a season. You're going to be put on some, see how he do. Because he was a beast. He probably still is a beast. But Michael Sam kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted in the NFL. That's why they didn't let him play. Michael Sam kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted in the NFL. That's why they didn't let him play. Michael Sam kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted in the NFL. That's why they didn't let him play. Michael Sam kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted in the NFL. That's why they did not let him play, Back to geopolitics, but that is of course a geopolitical aspect which, as North Americans, NATO, we have to, of course, do the best. Look at those 4 bags. 1, 2, 3, full. Full to the top. 4. Full to the top. They were bursting. Couldn't even close them. They were so full. 4 full bags there, see? It was so chubby and full. 1, 2, 3, 4. That one of them even kind of, they look like if they're standing on each other, they kind of topple. They're so full of. See? 1. That was the first one. There are 4 of them, right? See? Just how my ASP brain now works, because I was trying to calculate, okay, so I was trying to calculate the weight in them, the weight. Of course, I have to know more information, but see, they're full to the top. They're full. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're so full that I even thought, when I was my ASP brain just tried to calculate how much they weigh, you know, and the dimension of their quantitative dimensions, not qualitative, quantity, like weight, pounds and kilos. Work to do. That could be dangerous for a bike going fast, tries to turn here, goes and flies right into the home here. So we got work to do across the North American Collective. We got a mass public-private partnership for the rehabilitation of our infrastructure, our bridges, our citizens. That's my dream. PPP, public-private partnership, the dancing goddess in the Dragon Kingdom. Geopolitics, one-on-one. Leave the baggage at the door. Leave the baggage at the door. And of course, what I'm gonna say now is that, of course, I have proof for this following statement. Back in 2019, October, I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, in October, I predicted what's happening now. In October 2019, I have predicted what is happening now in a general manner. You heard that correct. So in October 2019, I have the proof. I posted my first video October 17, 2019, just before I had COVID. I got triple vaxxed. I survived right before, and I don't know what caused COVID. I believe it was transmitted from snakes. I believe it was transmitted from snakes to human beings, but I don't know for sure. I have a doubt. Thus, I cannot rule out another cause for. I cannot rule out another cause for COVID, for the coronavirus. I cannot rule out another cause, although I believe it was snakes to human beings. I cannot rule out another cause, but I can say that what I do know for sure, without a doubt, 100%, is that before COVID, back in 2019, October, November, I had made, created, and produced a workout training program system designed, created, made, of course, to go hand in hand with the World War III scenario, which strongly resembles the situation where we are living now. Quite resembles the situation where we are now. Quite resembles the situation where we are now. You heard that correct. So I created what's called officially titled, I wish I could get my anonymous friend a house, and like that house that you saw yesterday by the river. I wish I could get her a house. I got that house by the river there that you saw with the weeping willow. That is something, of course, which we have, of course, to interject, and that is something which I wish I could, of course, give to her. Buy her a house here, or the one that you saw yesterday by the river. I guess I gotta pinpoint it on the camera, the precise time. That is some work I gotta do myself, you know, but timestamp it and rock and roll. So, the General War Integrated Total Body Training System. That's the technical official academic title for what I created back in 2019. A workout training program system of which myself have performed successfully more than 372 sessions. More than 372 sessions, also known as the Draconis workout, the 300 workout. It's a simple, effective workout training program system which requires no equipment, which of course I had made, created, and produced to go hand in hand with the workout training program system created to go with a World War III scenario, an international conflagration. I am advocating and have been for more than 4 years now to be established and for citizens to be financed to do it, to work it, to do it, to work it, to do it, to work it, and of course to do it, to work it, and to conquer myth and doings and workings of its inner workings, of course, to be, of course, financed in universities, high school, as young as 7. As young as 7 people can do it, and of course even elderly, seniors, and those who need to get in shape. And it is not meant for aesthetic reasons. It has a science beside it. The science is simple. It includes push-ups, hawk squats, and marching cardio. So it's an integrated. That's why it's called integrated. It takes about an hour to do, and yes, you know, I love that. Every time I pass by here, I sense some good gas, so good. It makes me think of that Napolitan ice cream. You know how the colors are done there. See how the colors are on the go with the Napolitan, and that's just something what you gotta see for yourself here when you pass. We got great architecture, Hawk Island, Montreal, and I wish my anonymous friend we could split 50-50 on a house like this. 50-50, half-half, or my house in front of hers, and then we can switch every month, every full moon, every season we can switch houses in between, you know. That's just something what we have to do, and we have of course to regulate and do together here. Go heading to my second home, Mount Royal, and this financial stress for me, but that's about it. Now of course working out, I'm investing in the body, as I have been and will continue to call for the mass financing of citizens across what I call the North American Collective, aka the North American Civilizational Complex, to be mass financed to workout, train, exercise by a massive public-private partnership involving the NFL, NHL, and the MLB, NBA, and all institutions and organizations. Of course, that's a beautiful green right there. Quite a beautiful green, and that's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get it on that go. And that's something what you have, of course, to interject yourself, as all the dynamical forces that exist within my workout, which I'm gonna now, before I go deep into geopolitics, I'm gonna explain my workout, what it is with that, and that is something which you have to do with that, and something which I have, of course, to do in the upper position, of course, where we are now, to get it on the go for this, for the loving kindness of which, of course, my workout training was created to go hand in hand with the World War III scenario. And that is just something where we have, of course, to there's the domain there where we are, of course, another one that's full, of course, of potholes where we are at the domain, to get it on that go with that, you know. So that is just something what we have to get doing on the go, you know. So that is just something what we got to be doing, you know. So it's just something. Watch it, you're coming into me. Oh, that was a deviation on the go. That's coming into me, is texting, you know. So I said, watch it, you're coming into me, you know. So that's it. It's of course where we are. It would have been okay, it's just that I didn't want, of course, to commit an accident, you know, because my fellow cousin was texting, and you gotta get it on that go like that, you know. And it's that situational awareness, and you know, I'm smiling because I said watch it, and because I saw 4 steps and then got close and then you gotta ask first, consent. Just like it reminds me of when I made out with my fellow queer community, with homosexuals, and we kissed a bit, and they started kissing me, and I said I don't mind, but just ask me first, like, just, you know. And I said it's okay, don't worry, but just ask me next time. And that was a good homosexual a few years ago on the mountain. Just a little bit of good kissing with my fellow homos, you know. But you women, you're men, women, you know. I am pansexual. Whatever case, this was nothing such as the case. I'm just, because it reminded me of that incident when I was atop the mountain, and my fellow queer community, how my fellow homo came into me and started hugging me and kissing me and said, yeah, ask. So no, it's okay, it's just ask, because, you know. Anyways, that's a little bit of the back to my workout training program system. Of course, I think you gotta press the button here. No, gonna pass on the side. So where we're going now, we're going to the mountain, but sometimes we take different routes. So the different routes, of course, to get to the mountain is something where we got to get to the mountain on the side, you know, and that is just different ways to get to the mountain. But this route you already know. Sometimes we come by that street, sometimes we come by the other one, sometimes by the other one. So this one is the 4th one or the 5th one where we have, of course, different ways to get to the mountain here. And here we have a big mansion, gated. I believe it's the consulate or the embassy of China, you know, the consulate and the embassy of China, you know. So I believe it is, but I'm not sure. Because it's a big one, but you can't see it now because it's dark. But during the day, you can see it. It has the 4 stars and like the Beijing. I think it's no longer called. It was the Forbidden Palace on it. It has the emblem of the People's Republic of China. Emblem of the People's Republic of China, not Taiwan, but not the ROC, not the Republic of China, but the People's Republic of China, mainland China, the Communist, Marxist, Leninist, Maoist one-party state. People's Republic of China. It has the red and yellow emblem. It has like yellow stars on red, and it has that yellowish, goldenish building on it. The emblem of the People's Republic of China, not necessarily the flag, but the emblem. Oh, so that is the embassy or the consulate of the People's Republic of China there. And now we got a trade war with China, something which if you want to commission, we're going to have just to dedicate ourselves on the canola business, because my fellow brothers and sisters out in the prairies always remind me when I cross Canada coast to coast, because we got a lot of canola. To find some solution, maybe my American brothers and sisters, how about to cook? How about the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB? Maybe get some Canadian canola, healthy oil, eh? It's healthy oil, it's good oil, top world quality here, Canadian produced, and the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, of course, and have, of course, all the situations where we are now to be situated with the big tariffs on Canadian canola oil as a reciprocal trade war continues. And back to the general integrated total body training system, which I created. These are the rules. They're simple, effective, and efficient. It requires no equipment and is meant to increase overall general fitness. It is meant, of course, to increase general overall fitness. So my workout training program system is not made for aesthetics. So to develop for muscle beautification or muscle definition necessarily. My workout is made, although it can, but specifically my workout is meant to increase general overall fitness. It is designed, created to go hand in hand with a situation where, of course, we would have a world war, we would have an international conflagration, and where, of course, the vast majority of the population would be, of course, on the side and would be needing for the mobilization and the financing of fitness activities. So the financing of fitness activities is, of course, the General Integrated Total Body Training System, which I created back, of course, in 2019 October. So myself have performed more successfully 372 sessions, successfully completed all of my own workout training program system. I've, of course, successfully created myself, produced, not just produced, but completed sessions, because it has some laws, it has some rules, it has some regulations, which I'm going to, of course, now discuss. Beautiful flowers there. So I'm going to now discuss the rules, of course, the rules, and all those definitions where we are, of course, integral. The integral of the definitions, of course, are that it has a parameter. So these parameters, of course, are superposed to be inclusive in when you do it. So it has parameters, it has rules. You have to do it within the rules. So here there are beautiful yellow flowers. Gonna pose a that's quadruple the smile on that. And so here are the definitions, the rules, the parameters. One is allocated, a citizen, man, woman, trans, whatever, is allocated 93 minutes, 44 seconds, and 9/11ths of a second to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 hawks. That's the Trinity of theories. Push-ups, hawks, squats. Squats, push-ups, hawks. It doesn't matter in the order that you do them. You can only do 13 reps per set. Max 3 minimum. You can complete the push-ups, do the squats, do the hawks in whatever order. Or you can mix them up until you get to 100 of each. So it doesn't matter the order. You can do 13 squats, 3 push-ups, 7 hawks. And then but you have to get to 100 for each, so that's 300 total, right? Once you start the countdown, there's no pause. Right? Once you start the countdown, there's no pause. You gotta march, walk, run, jog. You gotta keep it in motion. 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 So you have to keep it in motion. You cannot stop. You cannot pause once. So 93 minutes, 44 seconds, 9/11ths of a second. So 9/11ths of a second is a fraction. So in other words, it's 93 minutes, almost 45 seconds. Almost 45. Not entirely, but almost. So not entirely, but almost. 45 seconds. It's actually 9/11 of a second is to commemorate the 9/11 attacks, which tomorrow is the anniversary. Tomorrow is the anniversary of the 9/11 attack. I'm gonna do a big cleaning because the 40-day ends right. 40-day right ends today and beginning a new one tomorrow until we're gonna go until Scorpio the 23rd, 24th of October. So a new one begins tomorrow, and then we're gonna have another one, double parallel until the month of Scorpio for big cleaning. So 93 minutes, that's an hour and a half plus 3 minutes, 93 minutes, 44 seconds and 9/11 of a second. So that's 93 minutes, 44 seconds and 9/11 of a second, right? So that's almost 45 seconds, of course. So that is what it is. So there's no pause. Once you start the countdown, there's no pause. You got to continue marching, jogging, running, walking. You cannot pause. You can't pause. You got to keep it in motion. In other words, keep it in motion by walking, marching, jogging, running, by running, jogging, marching, walking, or by walking this pace, more slower pace, bigger pace, different paces. But you cannot stop. You cannot stop. You cannot stop. You cannot stop. So you cannot stop. You gotta do it continuously. You gotta do it with that. So you can't stop. You can't stop. You gotta march, jog, run, or walk. Walk, jog, run, or march. Marching steps, walking steps, running steps, jogging steps. One of those four. Yeah, so those are the 4 rows I created back in 2019 to go hand in hand with a workout training program system, which of course is done, made and created to go hand in hand with such a workout training program system, which is made, of course, created consequently and in the aspect where we are, to see that is something what you gotta do. Now, of course, all that situational aspects is where we are now, of course, to see in the loving aspects and the loving kindness, of course, all the situational complexities of where that workout can be done. Actually, you can perform it pretty much anywhere, right? I guess if it's thunder and lightning storms, then you gotta consider that. But in other words, it requires no gym membership. And you can do it in open space. You can do it in a park, on the mountain, by the river, in front of your porch. You could do it in your room. It requires certain space, right? Because you gotta march or jog, like you can march like this and turn back, right? March, turn back, do push-up squats, march, turn back. So you have to have a certain space, but you can take a few steps and then turn back. Just like you see me doing it in my room. A few steps, turn back, and that's where you see it, with the workout training program. And that's what you do, and that's how you have, of course, to get it on the go now and getting on that. And that's just something where you have to be thinking about. And if you do it successfully, those are the rules. You got to do 100 push-ups, 100 hogs, 100 squats while marching, jogging, or not pausing in between. By marching, jogging, running, or walking pace, you got to do those. You can do them, like I said, in different ways, different ways. But you have to keep, of course, the pace. You have to keep the pace. You can't stop, You can't stop, So you cannot stop. You cannot stop. You cannot stop, you can't stop, and that's just what you gotta do, that's just what you have to do with that, and that's just what you gotta be doing, you can't stop, you can't stop, you gotta keep it in motion, right? Simple, effective workout training program system, designed again, specifically according to certain parameters. It increases general overall fitness. Again, it's not made to increase muscular aesthetics and beautification of the muscles to look like Apollo, but it is, of course, increases overall fitness. It does, because push-ups, it's a whole body workout training. The squats work the lower body, and the hawks work the toes, because you got to go on the toes, and then you got to flex your neck, turn your heads. The hawk, you turn your heads left and right, or in a semicircle, and then the hawk, you propel yourself on the toes, and you do the hand motion. See, with both hands, not just one. With both hands, you got to go up and down while going up and down on the toes. So that's the hawk, like you're flying, right? That's the hawk exercise. Check out, I did hundreds of them since 2019, and I have been advocating for it to be incorporated and even mass financed across the North American Collective, across NATO, NORAD, all security. Of course, I've been advocating for the police security forces, the RCMP, the FBI, the armed forces of NATO, all the military armies of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization of NATO, to be as a standard workout for all the armies of NATO. It is the standard examination for the Draconis. Of course, have been calling for the mass public-private partnership, aka the Draconis, of course, to be consecutively done across the North American Collective ASAP in an integral manner, of course, in the plateau of where we are, of course, that we have to be on the go, and of course to be analyzing all the details of it. It's also beautiful in the simplicity, and that beautiful, of course, in the simplicity, and the beautification of that simplicity is, of course, that we have, of course, to have on the circumstantial of the go, and that is just the plurality, of course, where we have to get doing on the knowledge that we have the incarnation and the anomalies of this peculiar beauty of an exercise, which is simple, effective, and efficient. So its simplicity, efficiency, and efficacy is something which, of course, we have the domain, of course, to getting on the appellation, of course, of the corners. You could do it right there in the corner, right here in the corner, right in that corner, right in that corner. 4 corners here, you could do it. You could do it atop the mountain. You could do it integrally, of course, across the North American Collective, and that's where you can do it if you will to choose to do it. And I do recommend it. Back to geopolitics, back in 2019, I predicted what's happening now. I predicted what's happening now back in October 2019. I have the proof because I have the videos online. So I predicted a World War III scenario in international conflagration back in 2019, and it's unfolding just like I predicted. My prediction was based on more academic, autocratic, intellectual, and sophisticated geopolitical analysis based, of course, on my own development of my theories, semi-original, some of them inspired by other thinkers, Smith and others, and of course my own theories and philosophies concomitant to their development. So because one of the main premises, the main motives why I made this, the conclusion that, of course, humanity is set again towards an international conflagration was, of course, to the fact and due it to being, of course, that we had not resolved conflicts from the 20th century. That we had not resolved conflicts from the 20th century. That we had not resolved conflicts dating from the 20th century. So if anybody want to finance that I go up and down these stairs 300 times for $300 for a cause, for a reason, for somebody you love, or somebody XYZ right here. So of course that is the dynamic. That is, of course, the situational awareness of where we are now, intermittent, and in the plurality, of course, of all our environmental factors where we go now, to be and to live. So I predicted that due to several unresolved conflicts of the 20th century, several unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, those conflicts were not resolved fully, and due to their not having a resolution, a finality, a final resolution, those conflicts will end. And now I'm just gonna let my mane out because we entered darkness, my mistress, top the mountain, and always love to get a little bit of that here as I go. And oh yeah, made it again. Of course, I come here for years and years and years, a few times a week, a few times a week I come here, and that's what it is with that, and that's what we gotta get doing on the go, so here we go, always for the 63, for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the construction workers, truckers, firefighters, plumbers, grocery store clerks, those daycare workers who change some diapers. As I sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue, parallel, co-equally, sing that rock and roll for the brothers and sisters who take their second, third, fourth chances, and you do your criminal rehabilitation. You do your criminal rehabilitation. You do your criminal rehabilitation, and you take your second chances. You take your second chances and you roll with it, you know. You take your second chances and you roll for that drill, and you roll for the go, and you roll for the knowledge, and you roll for the in and the out, and the east and west and north and south, and circle square around the body. Hear the sounds of nature. So, back to what I was saying in the plurality of, we're gonna go back to geopolitics, and I have the proof. So, October 17, the first video, 2019, right before COVID. Like I said, I don't know what caused COVID. I had it. It might have been a bioweapon. I cannot rule out, because my belief that snakes transmitted COVID to human beings is not totally confirmed. So I cannot totally confirm what it was. If it was more and more for the CIA revision a few months ago, was that it was in fact a biological weapon. A biological weapon, of course, concomitant to, of course, all the evaluations which we have. You can see red, 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 sunrises and sunsets as we go now top mountain, Mount Royal to the top of the mountain and back home, you know. That's how we drill, and it's my ASP routine, ritual routine, you know. Mountain to the river, marching, working out, marching, dancing, rock and roll for years and years and years and years. I've been coming here in the past life too. Sometimes I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a man, a woman. I lived as a woman between 1688 and 1735 here. I lived as a woman in the United States post 1776, and you gotta read that George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly. George Patton's poem, one of my favorites, is called Through a Glass Darkly, where he discusses reincarnations, and he did not mention that he was born a woman. Because once he was my wife, and once I was his wife, and here we enter into the darkness. Into the darkness, my mistress. I recommend, if you don't know the mountain, you stay on the main roads where there's light, you know. Where there's light, you know. Where there's light. So my fellow citizens go there where the light is, but I love to come by here, and just here when I enter at night, I kind of get my BDSM submission, cuckoldness, and say the mistress who dances, goddess who has got the tombs and the temples, kissed by the goddess of infinite stars, mere space above, the starlight, to our sister here who dances with her brother the sun, Mother Nature, who, of course, I submit now. And when I come here in the dark, or in the day, even during morning, afternoons, late afternoon, sunset time, or night or evening after sunset like this, in the dark, I kind of get stripped of my illusions, you know. You get stripped of your illusions here when you come and you hear nature and just the perfection of all the cycle of nature, I guess, with the sun and the moon and the stars, and this mystery of mysteries here. And at the top of the mountain is the priestess or the goddess, who is that dragon rainbow zero, rainbow dragon zero, you know. Gotta get it on the go, and that is something which we have, of course, to commence and to begin and to be here, you know. As I suffered, struggled, and been depressed, been suicidal, and I'm smiling now because I know somebody's kissing now, holding hands, and give each other, give a massage, hug for me, hug like you never hugged for me as well, you know. Because for all we know, we could have nuclear war tonight, tomorrow. China might invade Taiwan, eh? The arrow seats an unresolved conflict. That was exactly my prediction. Back to geopolitics, that was what I predicted. That in the coming years, there's going to be a great war coming. It's going to be a great war. It's going to be a great war. There's going to be a great war coming. That there will be a great war coming. A great war coming. And this war will come, and because mainly due to many unresolved conflicts of the 20th century. It could be nation states such as Ukraine, Russia. Ukraine is an unresolved 20th century conflict. The Cold War period mostly. Some say it lasted 46 years, 45 I say. Many agree with me that the Cold War was 44 years, almost 45. Almost 45. So between March 1947 and December 1991, end of December, because the 26th of December, the perestroika began. So almost 45 years, officially 44 years and 9 months. Some say more than 45 years. Some say even 46, from 1946 to 1992, or 1945 even to 1991. So some say 46 years, 45. Most agree that is about close to 45 years. The duration, that is, of the geopolitical event, which stretched for many years, known as the Cold War, mainly fought between the USSR, Union of Socialist Soviet Republics, and the United States. So almost 45 years. That's a long time, right? That's 3 generations almost. 45 years. That's a long time, eh? 1947, March 1947, spring 1947 till the end of 1991, December 26. So almost 45 years. That I can agree. Or I can even say more than 45 years. I don't mind. I'm not set in stone on the duration of the Cold War. About more or less 45 years, which is a long time. Which followed by proxy wars, the East and the West. The East and the West mostly. The East and the West, you know. That is sometimes what we have to see between the East and the West. So that is just the consequential part of the aspects of how we are, of course, to see certain things and how we see certain dimensions of where we are, of course, now for the appellation, of course, of all the domain and the dictums where we are now, to see that we are consequently involved together and in this mess and this ending of the world as we knew it, geopolitically, social, culturally, financially. We have to say that in the past 42 months, 44 months, I guess since maybe February 24, 2022, but even during COVID, the geopolitical world set the course more than 44 years ago, around 1978, when Deng Xiaoping, after Mao Zedong's death and the opening of China to the world, and China becoming China rising and rose and mass urbanized and mass build mega cities and ports. It has 10 airports, 8 of the top ports and airports or 7 or 8 are in China. So they built in the end of the 20th century and in the 21st century mass urbanization and built mega cities and urbanization and even high-tech capabilities in the past 20 years, like they haven't done for decades and decades and decades. Rapid, also middle class and rapid standard of living increase, and rapid, of course, lots of 800 million people out of poverty. But I'm no supporter of China, not a fan necessarily, not a for the North American Collective, you know me first and foremost, for the 63, always first and foremost, for the 10, the 50 and the 3, my protocol is best for the fusion of Canada and the United States to the Imperial Republican complexes. Here we were a new civilizational complex, of here in Quebec, we made what I call the great linguistic compromise of the French language to have the continuity of peace, and security here, as I am for world peace, concomitantly. Of course, it is the geopolitical strategies which got to be employed, especially to be extended for the NATO complex, such as my DMAA, which I'm going to discuss shortly, because it's super important, the DMAA, especially at this point in time. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, October 2019 to be precise. October 2019 to be precise, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, and so created and produced a workout training program system designed and created, of course, to go hand in hand with a World War III scenario, whence of course I have been established that there's going to be a coming World War III, a great war, in other words, however you want to call it, an international conflagration of World War III in the future, back in October 2019. And I have proof, because I have hundreds and hundreds of workout videos and discussions about it for many, many years since. And that is, of course, just how I drilled it and how I concluded. Many more academic, intellectual, of course, nuances to it. But of course, one of the main important premise was that due to these unresolved conflicts of the 20th century, that due to these unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, we're gonna see them restart in the 21st century. So Russia, Ukraine, Ukraine, Russia is such an example. Of course, also Israel, Hamas. Hamas is an organization which was founded in the 80s during the Cold War. Hamas was founded in the 80s. They only took power during the mini civil war, which they had in June, July 2007. They only took power about 20 years after their foundation. So it took 2 decades for Hamas to reach power, to attain political power, social, political, military power over Gaza. They didn't have it for 20 years. They were founded in the 80s, so they were competing factions with Fatah and others, the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, and PLO, the Palestinian, and Yasser Arafat. So the Hamas was not founded by Yasser Arafat, was not founded, but by Yassin, by somebody known as Yassin. So that is something which you have, of course, to keep in mind. You got to keep that in mind. So that is also a paradox. Also, recently, a few months ago, there was the Pakistan and India, India and Pakistan, India and Pakistan, India and Pakistan, so India and Pakistan. Where's another one? India and Pakistan, which have an unresolved conflict from 1947 in many ways, and the partition, and Bangladesh was part of India and Pakistan. They split. Only later, Bangladesh in 1971, I believe, check if I'm not mistaken, 1971, Bangladesh split from Pakistan because they were united. They were one state, one country. And Kashmir region, the region of Kashmir, is an unresolved conflict, from that era. Kashmir is an unresolved conflict. And we had almost a nuclear war just a few weeks ago over it. Almost escalated. It brought down to some peace, to some agreements, but that's an unresolved conflict. And China and Taiwan is another one. China and Taiwan is another one. That is Taiwan, the Kuomintang, ruled after 1949. They ruled Taiwan, the ROC, Republic of China, in a kind of one-party military junta state for many decades. Taiwan, also officially known as the ROC, was of course ruled by martial law. So they didn't have election until like the 90s, by martial law officially. So they had a sort of a martial law, Taiwan. So that conflict is of course engaging back, of course, from those days. See somebody coming by the lights. So back from those days of the Cold War period. So that is just something which you have to, of course, consequently, of course, adhere to and be mindful about. So all that situational complex is, of course, all the dynamics of whence you are involved in the dynamics of the knowledge and the information of all these events which occurred, of course, on the side, of course, of the XYZ and the situational awareness where we are now, that these conflicts have recommenced in many ways and potential to intensify any day, any second, any minute, any hour, any day, any week, any month. Yeah, that's the problem. That is the problem. That is a big problem, actually, if you think about it consequently, right? So we here in North America, we are a new emergent civilizational complex, which is not totally divorced, but is distinct, right? It's not totally divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization. It's not totally divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization, right? So that distinction, while not being divorced, is something, of course, which we have, of course, intermittently to go by. That we're not divorced, but we are distinct from Western civilization. And that is something which, of course, one has to appellate and say in all the integrity of all our domain that we constitute together, even with Mexico is included, Canada, United States, as a North American collective. Whence here we made the great linguistic compromise. So of the French language, because Quebec is one of the French language here is important, and I have to also do it myself as an individual sovereign citizen. I always have, of course, to do it for myself as an individual. As an individual citizen, I also have to do the plurality, of course, to be engaged in all the situational complex where we are now, to be saturated and involved in the complexities of the multiplicities of our diverse North American civilizational collective, where we have individual sovereign citizen interests such as mine as an ASPI, especially as regards to my financial economic security, but also to be in concordiate with your security, individual security, and of course others individual securities, and others, of course, where we are now in all the civilizational domains, where we are to be mindful of everything that is now ours as a public-private partnership, which we have to install in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. And that is something where we have, of course, to be now, to get it on the left and the right in all the domains where we are the plurality of the imperial coming of the 63. So let it be. So now I'm gonna finish on that. So I have proof. I had predicted what's happening now in 2019, in October 2019. I had predicted what's happening now in October 2019. I had predicted what's happening now in October 2019. I had predicted what's happening now, in October 2019. I had predicted what's happening now in October 2019, in the plurality, of course, of all the civilizational constructs where we are now, of course, to be tough times, pain. I've been through pain, been through rain, been through fire, I've been through poverty, rock bottom, rising now. So now, of course, I have to discuss the DMAA, the direct military assistance and action, the direct military assistance and action, direct military assistance and action, the DMAA, the direct military assistance and action is something which we have, of course, to consequently, of course, be put on about to be and to show a little bit of that rock and roll where we are in the dictums of our polarity now. The direct military assistance or action, or vice versa, action or assistance, we have to adhere to it. It is a theory, it is a protocol, it is a frame of reference for future action or inaction vis-a-vis NATO, and whether we get involved in non-NATO related conflicts. Because keep in mind, Article 5 was only invoked once. Article 5 was only invoked once after 9/11. After 9/11, Article 5 was only invoked once. After 9/11, Article was only invoked once. Article 5 was our NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The NATO, of course, conflict is, of course, a alliance from 1949, a collective, of course, alliance, and that is just what it is, and that is just what we have to do with that, and that is just something of the situational awareness, of course, where we are, of course, to give now in the that. Before I do discuss it, I gotta HYDRAT. I gotta get on that hydration, and gotta think those workers, usually I give about 10, of course, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and 20 seconds because, of course, there could be rust on the pipes, there could be debris on the pipes, there could be dirt on the pipes, there could be little things which could impede, of course, the consumption thereof. But I gotta thank the engineers, the workers, who with brains and muscle, of course, they built, of course, all these pipes, and they got those pipes built on that, and something which we have, of course, to go and to get that appellation where they have to be doing now, and HYDRATE, get that hydration. Hydrate, and we're gonna discuss. Oh yeah, it is. That's what we got. And that's always good hydration to go. Oh yeah. Here we're at the back of the chalet. Belvedere. That's the Belvedere chalet there. Ah, I always wonder how they did it to bring it up, you know. How did they link it from below, the engineering, you know? How did they build it? Just how does it work actually, you know? It's just a water fountain, but think about it. All the way atop the mountain to link it all the way below, and then to construct it. It took some brains and muscles. So all these things which we got, of course, to know. Look at that. That's the city of the Hawk. So that is something which, of course, we have, of course, to consummate here where we are now. In the motives. You see, at the top, that's where we are. That's the skyscrapers, and here's the Belvedere Conjuring. So we're gonna discuss the DMAA, Direct Military Assistance or Action, you know, the Direct Military Assistance or Action, or assistance or action or assistance. So it's reciprocal, or it's one of those, either or. So this is a theory, a philosophy, a frame of reference for the NATO complex. So it is, of course, related to NATO. It is not just a construct, a theory, of course, but a theoretical framework, which, of course, has to be enlisted in all the domain where we are now, the consummation of all the activities where we are generally involved upon, and generally to be, of course, lovingly in this complex of the institution, of our institutions forthcoming, where we're going to find us the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions of the public-private partnership, where we are now to be, of course, on the congregations of all the domain, of course, where we are now, appellating that here at the top is the headquarters, of course, of the dancing goddess of the dragon kingdom, and here we are a beautification, and we're going to discuss, of course, the DMAA, the direct military assistance and action, plural, of course, to be in all the beautification of these gardens here. Look at these gardens are so majestic, so beautiful. That's what it is now. We got to get a little bit of that going. Here we are for the congregation, of course, of all the summit, which we are, of course, now to be a little bit of that singing rock and roll. They got to get it on the go for the, and that's all we got to get, you know. So that's all we got, you know. So some things where we are now. Top. Yeah, this is where we left to come, and that is something where we gotta be, you know. There you go. That is my favorite skyscraper. See? Look at that. So here's the Belvedere Conjuring, my favorite spot to come to be, and that's where we love to come and chill. And look at this for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, truckers, electricians, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, all those, of course, now, of course, to be on the appellative motive, of course, to be instaurated, and of course, integral, of course, in all the life-affirming situation where we have now to be affirmed where we are, of course, to get that going on the need for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, and all the firefighters and all those butchers, the nurses, the doctors. And think about it now, of course, how many truckers are going east, west, north, south, east, west, north, south. So many truckers are going underneath and in the go, and of course inside the complex of the 63, always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, and always that's fire skyscraper. I come here every week, a few times a week. In this life, in another life, this was built long ago. This is basically the headquarters of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. With that's the headquarters of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, and that's all we have to be doing like that, and that's all we gotta get on that rock and roll for the left and for the right and for in the middle, the Imperial Republic and Democratic complex of the North American Union, the Empire. Let it be for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, and electricians, the plumbers, the construction workers. I'm gonna, before I get into the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action, I'm gonna discuss, of course, the building of the four, of course, which we gotta build together before I get into the Direct Military Assistance and Action. So that is something which, of course, we have, of course, to congregate, and of course, we have to get it on the go with that, and that is something which, of course, we have to do coast to coast, ocean to ocean. So my will is to build the four, support the four, the building of the four, of course, the Imperial People's Coliseum, of course, the Imperial People's Coliseum. Let's go rock and roll with that, and here at the top, I'm gonna go back into the darkness, from the light into the darkness, fucking to the darkness. But these I gotta give a shout out. This is so good here. This is very excellent. And I like if you touch these, and especially those yellow ones. These feel so good to the touch. So you can't really see now because it's night, but it's so beautiful. Just gorgeous. Whoever chose these are so nice. Super nice garden. See all those flowers there? Number one. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's what we got, and that's what we got, and that's what we gotta get that rock and roll, you know. So that is just what it is for the XYZ, and that's how we gotta get that rock and roll for the left, for the right, and for all those butchers, bakers, nurses, and that's what they are, you know. They do, and they do a little bit of that, and that's what they gotta get on that rock and roll, you know. They do a little gossip there, and do a little gossip. That's what it is, and now we're gonna discuss the building of the four before I get into the DMAA. The building of the four, my will to build with your help. Forgotten Goddess Temple, 11 times to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory on the Canadian-US border, to build the Imperial People's Coliseum, where me and Donald Trump are going to fight and inaugurate the building. It's going to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. 11 times. Caesar Superdome is where many Super Bowls were fought, played, and battled out. One of my favorite Super Bowls is Super Bowl 47, which has several nicknames, aka Blackout Ball, aka Bro Bowl, aka Hardball Ball. My 49ers lost to the Ravens by 3, Super Bowl 47, of course. And of course, we're gonna build it on the Canadian-US border. This massive Imperial Sports Coliseum for sports in perpetuity. So me and Donald Trump are gonna inaugurate it, and of course we gotta get the rock and roll with that, and that's what it is. We're gonna build it on the Canadian-US border, and of course we're gonna consequently build this massive Coliseum to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, bigger than the Caesar Superdome, which changed names. Before it's in Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana. Before it was used to be known as the Mercedes-Benz Arena, and before that, Louisiana Superdome. So just like me, although still gotta pay that money to change officially my name, still gotta get that money to change officially my name, still gotta get that money to officially change my name, you know, and that's just what it is, and still gotta get that money, you know, to officially change my name, and that's just what it is here. Part civilized, part beast, wild. Half, just like I'm a man or woman, and just gotta read that George Patton through a glass darkly. Just gotta read George Patton through a glass darkly, which he was my wife, I was his wife in previous incarnations, previous past life, and that's what it is, and that's what we gotta get doing with that for the goal here, you know. Always gotta be on that side of the left and the right and in the middle, and the circumference is the circle, diameter, square, and of course the building of the four, the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, and that's what it is with that. And to build it on the Canadian-US border, on the Canadian-US border, on the Canadian-US border, yeah, on the Canadian-US border, on the Canadian-US border, to be 11 times bigger than that massive structure. And then we're gonna build the Forgotten Goddess Temple to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory. We're gonna build the pyramid, scarlet, crimson, our shades of red, the house of the dragon, that pyramid, house of the dragon. Scarlet and crimson, our shades of red, we're gonna build the red. And the fourth one, the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow queer community, LGBTQ plus community, and neurodivergent community. We're gonna build that, and that's what we're gonna build, and that's how we're gonna rock and roll, and that's how we're gonna drill it, you know, to get, of course, all the dynamics where we are involved, and that's just something where we have, of course, to be, you know, all the dynamics where we are now consequently to be involved, and of course to be on the go now with all the left and the right, and in the middle, and in the circle, and in the square, of course, circumference where we are now, to be on that dynamics, you know, to be, of course, imagining, and of course be on the plural side of all the activities where we are now, that we have of course to build, and we have of course to construct, and we have to be, and we have to love, and we have of course those dynamics which got to be put into place, and we have to execute, and we have of course to be prudent here because I'm in the darkness, the mistress, the top of the mountain, my doctor mountain, Mount Royal, headquarters of our empire. We're gonna have a quadruple type of capitals, and we got a full Dragon Army militarize for SSD, total security, total service, total defense, and build the public-private partnership, citizen integrated mass Dragon 911 protocols for total security, total service, total defense across the 63 and the NATO complex ASAP. And you know, before October 7th, I was advocating for Israel and Mexico to join respectively as the 32nd and 33rd, because now we got Sweden who joined NATO as the 32nd, you know, as the 32nd year. And here we are gonna stretch a bit, and that's my favorite skyscraper there. That's the pyramid, quite a beautiful. This is another view of Montreal, Hawk Island of the Hawk N.A.C.W.P Montreal, but that is my favorite there, right in front, the pyramid. See, it's atop, it even has the apex as a pyramid. See, so we got pyramids. We got pyramids here in Quebec, Montreal, Hawk Island. See, and on top here you can see the bridge is turning rainbow. It has different colors, you know, different colors. Of course, I gotta mention that the lights that you see, it's all from Hydro-Quebec. They don't pollute. So all these lights do not pollute. All these lights don't pollute at all. Hydro-Quebec. It's not well known. People sometimes come, and you know, I always tell people who come as tourists that all the lights, all the electricity is clean, zero pollution, zero emission. We got 63 dams. Imagine that. So all these lights come from water, from hydroelectricity. Kind of cool. And hydroelectricity from here goes to all the way to Manhattan, 5 or 6 states. So now we're gonna go back into the mountain. I'm just gonna come here and say salutations again to the firefighters, the butchers, the truckers, the nurses, the doctors, and those who build these. Bravo, man. Construction workers on the cranes. Amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. That's what it is with that, and that's what it is with the go. And that's how we have, of course, to go there, and that's how we gotta get drilling with that, and that's how we have to be, you know, just the moment. And there were a couple there speaking some French, and you gotta get on that go, and you gotta get on that XYZ, and that's what it is with that, and that's what I gotta go now, you know, to just get the dynamics of all the situation where we are now, and just appreciate the French language here. And we got over 700 cheeses and great cuisine. It's not just poutine, we got just great cuisine and not just poutine, and you know, we gotta get on that go, and you know, we have of course to be into all the circumstantial positions whence we are now, and whence we are involved, you know, of the dynamics of being, you know, in the situational aspect where you have now of course to get it on that left and in the right, and sometimes you ride it in the middle, you know, you ride it in the middle, and we ride it in the middle, and we have of course to get the dynamics, you know, the situational dynamics once we are affluent about, and affluent about the conglomeracy, and affluent about of course the dynamics where we get involved in all the situational life affirming situations of this coming of our empire. So the DMAA, it's very important that you pay close attention to what I will discuss now. Very important that you pay close attention, especially if you are into politics and geopolitics. The DMAA stands for D, direct military, A, assistance, A, action. Direct military action or assistance is an acronym for a working theory, a philosophy, and a protocol to be established for NATO's frame of reference, frame of work, and a working tool to be established for NATO, because it has consequences. So again, thank you to my anonymous friend who helped a lot in regards to my autism and Asperger's, and of course all the domain which of course we have, and of course all the affluences where we got, of course, to be involved in the situational representations where we are now on the domain to be circumscribed about, in all the situational awareness where we are of the domain, and all the satisfactory evolutionary practices which we are endeavored to attain as a macrocosm, collective security defense plateau across NATO, and the total Draconis 911 protocols for the total North American collective and NATO plateau. I don't want to get too academic scholarly about the SSD, Security Service and Defense Legion, and the Draconis thereof, but suffice it to say that the DMAA, Direct Military Assistance in Action, is a protocol theory and a frame of a working theoretical framework to put into practice. So DMAA, Direct Military Assistance in Action, it has as a C, it has a consequence whether we take action or assistance. And of course it is, I'm not going to go in depth because there's much to it, but generally, and again, I thank you my anonymous friend who has guided me and had a discussion and made me aware how it can sound, or not initiate, how it can sound that it's not compassionate or empathetic, but you have to keep in mind that this is a working tool for future military action or inaction thereof, or assistance or unassistance thereof, right? It has nothing to do with humanitarian aid provisions and providing food security, providing sanitation, providing shelter for refugees and such. This is strictly military. That's why it has the M in it. Direct military assistance or action undertaken by NATO vis-a-vis conflicts which do not affect NATO member countries or that are in between non-NATO member countries. That's what has to be understood. So it's not about providing food. That's something completely separate. That's why I have to position it in order to fully understand that this is a working tool for military action or inaction thereof, whence we take or we don't take military action in the future. So to give you a concrete example, and to say that in parentheses there's the C to the DMAA, to the direct military assistance or action, there's the possibility of C, the consequence. And one of the consequences could be that nation states, powerful nation states, vis-a-vis that we got involved and took assistance or action, direct action. It could be that they're financing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups within NATO member countries. If you remember, just last year, 25th of October, the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever super lab, which they had enough doses of fentanyl which could have potentially killed the population of Canada twice over, 2 times. And this was a transnational criminal syndicate organized group. Transnational criminal syndicate organized groups by their secret police or other nefarious activities which can be, of course, undertaken via NATO vis-a-vis us in ABCD 1 to 3 XYZ manner, covertly or so, or sabotage, right, which we are vulnerable also. So direct military assistance or action or assistance, I could give you a concrete example. Ukraine was not part of NATO. It is not and was not part of NATO. Sweden is the 32nd one, and like I said a priori before October 7th, now we're going to have to see what's happening with the conflict with Israel-Hamas to see if we can find a resolution, because before October 7th I was advocating for both Israel and Mexico and Israel to join respectively as the 33rd, 32nd that is, and 33rd member states to join simultaneously, Israel, Mexico, before October 7th, which is going to be 2 years soon since the Hamas armed terrorist groups entered Israel via 44 points, by 44 points of entry, right? So from the Mossad, IDF, Shin Bets, and journalists. Supposedly they entered Israel via 44 different points or locations, right? Entered the fortress Israel. So that is whence it was. And that was, of course, the reflective man that prior to October 7th, I was advocating for this. Now I guess we're going to have to find a reconciliation and a solution, and this conflict when it ends, whether Israel could become the 33rd member country of NATO, and then to have a peace treaty. But then other countries should be aware that if they do attack Israel, that Article 5 can be involved. But Israel is not part of NATO. When Israel was attacked, Israel is not part of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states, right? But prior to October 7th, I was advocating for Israel to become the 33rd member country. I actually had a series on it. It was called Genesis 33:4. It's a reference to the twins, Jacob and Esau's reconciliation when they hugged and they kissed and they cried in the Bible, or Genesis reference. In the Bible, just a reference, a biblical reference. It was called the Genesis 33:4 sounding project, and up to Genesis 44. So back to the DMAA, Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and of course others are not part of NATO. Article 5, which states of NATO that if one member state is attacked, then that's an attack on the collective. Only once in the history of NATO, which dates from 1949, celebrated 75 years, was invoked only once. September 11th, today is the 10th of September. So tomorrow we anniversary both of the September 11th attacks and the one and only date when NATO's Article 5 paradoxically was invoked, only once and only once since NATO was created, since 1949. So during the 75 years, no country of NATO was attacked in these 75 years by a non-NATO member country. The only time it occurred was September 11th. Article 5 was invoked only once. Anyway, so the DMAA is direct military assistance or action of NATO member countries, as individual or as a collective, involving in a military way, by assistance. Ukraine, we did not take action. NATO member countries, we did not take direct action, but we took assistance. So even Canada provided military assistance. So this is in reference only to military. The DMAA, theory, protocol, frame of working for the future, it has only to do with military assistance. Military assistance by providing equipment. Canada provided munition, helmets, training, and weapons, automatic rifle weapons, and of course, armored vehicles. So military gear, military weaponry. Military weaponry, all that military weaponry and gear, military weaponry, military weapons and gear, military weapons and gear, military weaponry and gear, military weapons and gear, right? Military weapons and gear was provided by Canada, so that's assistance, right? And since a few years now. Also, it could be assistance vis-a-vis Taiwan. Action, there could be action in Libya. NATO planes bombing Libya. NATO planes bombing Syria. ISIL. NATO planes bombing Iraq. NATO planes bombing Yugoslavia. That's action. So either action or assistance, or it could be both. It could be both action and assistance. So there's many instances, events, and realities where NATO member countries, or as a whole, or as different individual nation states who are part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization of NATO, in the year of darkness, October 8th, I know everything to know there is about those 5G, 3G, 4G, 5Gs, and these antennas and satellites, because I built with other scientists. I'm a super ASPE scientist. I built satellites, sats, internet telecommunication, undersea cables, and radio, and everything to do with science. I am 66 years old, in that kind of Bill Gates age, and I monitor all telecommunications of NORAD NATO via public-private partnership, transnational, super scientific SSD protectorate syndicate of total police state in that parallel life. And I built AI and super chips and microchips and satellites and undersea cables and supercomputers in collaboration with other scientists in that parallel life. So total information grid that I built in the year of darkness. Now I live in my parallel with my parallel self in the year of darkness. It's November 8th, 2029. It's my parallel self. Now I communicate a bit about science, technology, passing by these scientific and technological posts. They're radio, television, and with my parallel self communicate a bit. I get headaches. He gets headaches from my rock and roll. Says, what's that rock and roll you're singing? Don't you know math, science? I said, I know a little bit. Says, I know you're above average, but in my parallel self is way is in the top 0.001 of scientists in the world. But in that parallel life, I also have Asperger's. But that was the special interest was science, computers, technology, and I ended up building supercomputers, satellites, microchips, everything to do with internet, super communications, and smartphones, and Pegasus, and surveillance, and tech science, and built supercomputers around the world, and satellites, and buildings, strategic buildings, and of course, that's what I do in that parallel life. As in this life is geopolitics and have predicted what's happening now, and I present to you on YouTube, although my total mobile defense theory, which I created since 2017, it's for NATO, NORAD, NATO, but I cannot discuss it over much because it is national security sensitive and it has national security sensitivities which can only be discussed with others in a joint manner, of course, with David McGinty, with Pam Bondi, with Tulsi Gabbard, and on the left, on the right, all security apparatus of North America and NATO. So, in other words, I cannot discuss too much about the total mobile defense theory because it's national, binational, and NATO security sensitive. I developed it, created it as a geopolitical strategy for total SSD, part of all my work for total SSD, security, service, and defense. Plateau back, of course, to what I said now for, of course, the DMAA, direct military assistance, an action as a frame of working, as a frame of reference for the domains in which we are now. Forgive my parallel super scientist, ASPI super scientist life in October. It's October 8th, 2029 now, in the year of darkness. And now, in the year of the dark and the light, and the black and the white and the rainbow, and 8100 dragons laying the foundations for the Imperial Republic of the 63 and discussing the DMAA, the direct military assistance and action, is of course the discussion of the DMAA again. So there's those references of events. Is those references and events. So those references and events are of course categorical in all the prudential aspects of where we have now to be concomitant to all the dynamics where we have sufficient enough information and what I divulge to even be a working tool, although some of the secrets thereof of the DMAA and the in-depth I cannot disclose fully, just like I cannot disclose fully the total mobile defense theory, only to the initiates, I guess. So now I'm going to discuss, of course, the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance and Action, as a point, of course, in the concomitant point of our evolutionary practices for the 21st century, where we need to absolutely take into account the DMAA in a manner which, of course, will propel us for future reference. So the direct military assistance and action, again, is a theory, a protocol, a working tool of reference for NATO vis-a-vis whether to take action or assistance in the future vis-a-vis other conflicts which have nothing to do really with NATO or are in between NATO member country states. Although NATO member countries might have certain interests, economic, financial, commercial, otherwise, within those countries. But I'm talking about strictly conflicts that are not part of NATO, do not involve Article 5, basically, that do not involve the invocation, the discussion of Article 5 therein, of course. That is to be understood fully, principally, you have to understand that, right? So again, nothing to do with humanitarian aid, with reflective humanitarian aid, or whatever has to do with humanitarian aid and thereof. So the direct military assistance and action is undertaken by NATO vis-a-vis other countries in a manner, of course, of which we have to divulge all the informations that are available vis-a-vis such events which have occurred in Yugoslavia. And the more recent one is basically Ukraine. It could also be Ukraine, Taiwan. We provided military assistance to Taiwan, not whole NATO member countries, but of course the United States and other countries, and even one can even say, because Israel is not part of NATO, but Germany and the US and other countries, France and Belgium, even Canada, has provided military aid to Israel. So that could be another point of reference, right? Another point of reference. And other countries as well, it could be taking sides in the conflict, but it has to be not just taking diplomatic sides, it has to be military action or assistance. So again, you see, not diplomatic, it's military, where you provide assistance by providing munitions, helmets, rockets, ICB, things of a military nature, has to be clear, understood. So that has the C, the DMAA, whether undertaken, as it has in the against, you can say against Russia, because when you take DMAA, it's ultimately against an opponent, because you're assisting militarily or taking action militarily between two opponents, opposing armed forces, armed conflicts. So thus, there's a taking of a side necessarily, and of course, there's the important inflexible point of moving past the point of neutrality, because it's Article 5 is not involved, right? I don't want to get too academic, too scholarly about it. So basically, we provided military assistance to Ukraine. We made potential enemy of Russia. And Russia, covertly, parallel with China because of Taiwan, they constituted in the past 3.5 years a solidification of their military alliance. So that relates to the sea. This is geopolitical theory here. This is geopolitics one-on-one. This is geopolitical theory in practice. This is not just theory, this is practice, right? This is not just theory anymore. This is a frame of reference, a theoretical work of reference. It's a philosophy. It has certain theories to it, but it's, of course, the theoretical frameworks. It's, of course, theoretical frameworks, of course, which we have now. Of course, the theoretical framework, which we got, of course, in the concomitant where we are now. So all that theoretical framework is to say that from the theory goes into practice. From theory goes into practice. So this practice, of course, have to be fully understood in all its acclamation, that from the theoretical framework, it moves past the theoretical framework, and of course it's incorporated from an academic perspective to an actual working point in reference where the DMAA is undertaken in the future, or not undertaken, right? Because it has the consequences. The consequences of the DMAA could be that potentially there's the frame of reference where, of course, the mass countries, of course, such as Russia, China, finance fentanyl production in United States and Canada, and finance and covertly support transnational criminal organized groups, because more and more I'm declaring this fentanyl, more and more I'm declaring the fentanyl, more and more I'm declaring fentanyl as a bioweapon, because it doesn't make sense from a strictly economical perspective, economics only, that it is economics only, because of course if you are to buy, you would intend the producer, drug kingpin, drug lord to make money, finance. But if more and more are dying and in so dire circumstances from fentanyl and so many deaths and overdoses, I believe that more and more I'm declaring fentanyl a bioweapon, covert bioweapon. So it could be, of course, that the transnational criminal syndicate organized groups are founded by the opposing forces, interest of those countries who have opposed the countries which we assisted or took action. The DMAA, A, direct military assistance or action, has the C, in parentheses, is the consequence. And one of the consequences could be internal sabotage, fomenting riots here in Canada, fomenting riots, fomenting unrest in universities, infiltration, creating conflict, creating disease, unrest, biological warfare, COVID. You follow? DMAA. It's in the past, it's for now, and it's for definitely for the future. You know, the Dragon Army, we're going to have to take the DMAA every time, every day, into consequence, into analysis, into framework. Like the motto of NATO is, in animus consula deliberated, a mind unfettered in deliberation, a mind unfettered in deliberation, Animus in consuelo liber. Animus in consuelo liber is the four words, which is a phrase in Latin, which of course is the motto of NATO, a mind unfettered in deliberation. So we have to deliberate and we have to incorporate the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, into the NATO framework, into the NATO framework, into the NATO framework, into the NATO framework, the DMAA, into the NATO framework, the DMAA, into the NATO framework, the DMAA, into the NATO framework, the direct military assistance and action into the NATO framework, the direct military assistance and action into the NATO framework. So that's what we have to do. The DMAA, direct military assistance and action, has to be implemented into the consequential abilities and rehabilitation for the future. So it's a great working tool which financially stressed, but see, this is gold. This is a golden theory here. I put it because I put it open source for NATO to be deliberated against and to be deliberated for and to be deliberated against whether we take action or assistance or for. It has to be in deliberation. And think about the consequences of this if we take continuing assistance or action, right? Parallel, because my complex is only for SSD, Draconis, Public-Private Partnership, is only for interior, NORAD, NATO, North American, the 63, and NATO Collective, internal SSD, Security, Service and Defense, and Citizen Integration Treaty for all, maximum security, service and defense across NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states, that the DMAA is of course a frame of reference for of course all the future conglomerations where we have now, intermittent in all the civilizational complex where we are, the dynamics to be, and to be of course in all the scholarly, and from the academics of course to the academia, from all the civilizational complex for the academia where we are now, in all the civilizational pluralities of the world, and of course in the assistance or action where we undertake it into the concomitant appellations of whether to do it or not. It requires deliberation, just like the motto of NATO is, in animus in consuelo liber, in animus consuelo liber, and animus in consuelo liber. Animus comes from mind, psyche, so a mind unfettered in deliberation. So whether we undertake action or inaction, that has to be of course fully up to a collective decision, and kind of vote, referendum. It should have been a referendum, and this DMAA should have been the protocol for us NATO member countries to vote on whether we do assistance or action. The DMAA should have been since the beginning. But I wasn't there. I was in a past life, in a past life. So I was in there in 1949 in the 50s, although I was in my previous past life. Now 2025, the DMAA has to be clearly put into the charter, into all the protocols of NATO, and pamphlets distributed or organized and studied by all NATO representatives, and then we deliberate according to the DMAA whether we undertake action in the future, vis-a-vis assisting or taking action in other conflicts. And in parentheses, the C, small c, big C, such as Russia, China. That's the consequence, right? Russia and China have ended the hegemony of the United States, whether we like it or not. They clearly ended. I mean, you can see the parade, China, you can see the parade, a military parade. And what you notice is, I have to watch it again over the weekend. It was tens of thousands of troops, but my brothers and sisters, I didn't see one black person. I did not see one black person among the army, the People's Liberation Army. I did not see one black person. Maybe I missed it. I gotta watch again. It's interesting. You can see the dynamics. I mean, in my Dragon Army, I certainly, NORAD NATO armies, I want to see blacks and whites and together in the army of the free, the brave, the loving, the strong, the free, the brave, the loving. Strong on freedom and being brave and being is not enough. You gotta add some of that loving, So of course, we'll to build this army of black and white together, build a black and white together. So of course, it is something which of course we have to do in all the civilizational complex where we are now, to be, of course, concomitant where we are, to get doing and to get done on the go. And that is just something which we have, of course, to do in the concomitant of all the pluralities of where we are now, and of course where we're moving forward for tomorrow. So enough of the DMAA, consider it, think it into, then let me know if you saw a person of color, black. My brothers and sisters were black, so I did not see in the tens of thousands in the military parade. Interestingly enough, not even one, not even one, not even one, not even one man or woman who are black. Like in the Canadian Armed Forces, you see some of my brothers and sisters who are blacks, black men, black women, you know, in the U.S. Armed Forces, and my neighbors are black included, you know, definitely in my army, you know, and I want to have, if we can, have the proportion of the 13.3, 13.4% of the North American population are my brothers and sisters who are blacks, you know. So in the army of China, in the parade, I didn't even see one, you know, that's not even one. That was quite interesting to see the dynamic, you know, to see that we're dealing with a different civilization than ours, in the North American civilizational collective, which we got work to do on racism, on, you know, anti-neurodivergent discrimination, on anti-LGBTQ, all that. But it starts with me, because even myself, I might have certain sentiments inside, internally, you know, something. Doesn't mean that I have lived and experienced and XYZ with a person of color or a certain person, individual who's different skin color or that, have to generalize, you know, because just like Aspies, I'm an individual Aspie, but not all Aspies, and we have to reject as Aspies the denomination as that we are evil, bad, or negative, or malicious, you know, because we're also individuals, we're also individuals, we're also individuals, we're also individuals, and that's centrism, sacrosanct, public-private partnership, democratic republicanism, and pro-liberation of universal revolutionary centrism, which my centrism is North American centric, because most of my ideas, theories are first and foremost for the 63, the North American Collective, and of course for NATO. So now that I finished on the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, I'm going to go into the DRT, debt refusion theory. Super important that I discuss the debt refusion theory, the DRT, the debt refusion theory, now that I'm on the subject, going from the mistress into the light, heading back home, heading out back west, getting a bit hungry. So they're going to discuss the DRT. Why do I make the statement that it is the solution? If it's not the solution, I always say it's the only solution or something parallel to it. Fundamentally, it has to reflect to be the solution, if not a little bit modified, but generally with the fundamentals, it has to follow my fundamental theory, the DRT, debt refusion theory. What is the DRT? The debt refusion theory stands for D, debt, R, refusion theory. It incorporates, infuses, integrates MIT, monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union in the 90s by Germany, Belgium, France, Italy, many other countries in Europe. They destroyed the national central banks and they created a common central bank back in the 90s, the ECB. They no longer have national central banks like they used to, nor do they have national currencies like they used to back in the 90s. In the 90s, they created the ECB, the European Central Bank, which is basically fundamentally a central bank for many nation states. They no longer have national central banks like we do with the Bank of Canada, like the Federal Reserve in the United States, Banco de Mexico, Bank of Israel, and Bank of China are national central banks. Bank of Japan, Bank of India. In Europe, many countries no longer have. They destroyed them and they're in all the national currencies. So that theory, which they implemented, the European Union implemented in the 90s, is integrated in my DRT theory, which has to be incorporated and has to be established and has to be implemented binationally, both Canada and United States, because we're in the same economic financial position for most of our citizens. So that's why it has to be implemented binationally integrated binationally in the Canada and United States. So the four main problems which are affecting us, or the majority of the population, are of course such. The four main problems are of course in this division, and of course all this division where we are now to be implemented in the strategies where we are now in the plural. So of course these dynamics where we are now are of course consequently of course to be, you know, all the civilizational complex which we are now to be doing, you know, so in all the civilizational complex, which we are now, of course, has to be done in the concomitant aspect where we are now, where we are now. So this, of course, aspect where we are now, of course, into the integrated manner, or where we are now, is, of course, something where we have to, because of the four main problems, because of the four main problems which affect us fundamentally in different ways. Then at other times, the four main problems are, in whatever order you put them, the four main problems affect us. One, the growing cost of living. So because of these four problems, economic, financial problems, we have, of course, to implement my DRT theory. So one of the problems is the growing cost of living. The prices of goods, prices of bacon, prices of cheese, prices of lettuce, the price of my wafers. The prices of goods are increasing. The rents are increasing. My rent went up between $6 and $10. Between $6 and $10. Between $6 and $10. Between $6 and $10. That's why my rent went up, increasing between $6 and $10. That was between $6 and $10. That was the increase of my rent. Between $6 and $10, that was the increase. So I'm not going to say exactly what number, but I cannot complain because it was fair for me. It wasn't, we have a certain rules and regulations in Montreal, Hawk Island, certain limitations imposed by the municipal regulations. So it wasn't even half, of course, of what it would have been permitted. It would have been permitted. So, of course, that is what it is with that, and that is what we have to go with the simultaneous prepositions where we are now involved, to be on the concomitant side of the thing. So the aspects that my rent went up, of course, and of course the process is that the third one is the stagnation of the salaries. So the salaries are stagnated in whatever order again. The fourth one is the growing credit cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, the credit cards. The credit cards even now are being swiped. So more people are getting, of course, in debt even now. Somebody has maxed out his fourth credit card now from Montreal to San Francisco. Somebody's, of course, swiping the credit card even now. I don't have credit cards myself. I have a bank loan. It's not really a loan. It's a credit line. $10,000 I'm in debt. I got $10,000 in debt. Let me check my wallet. Do I got $5 to give myself some wafers or something sweet on the way? If not, I got ice cream at home. I think I got $5. Yeah, I got 5. Oh, but I got in the fridge. Sorry, no spending money today. I got in the fridge. I forgot to take it out before I left. And I got milk. Sound good. I got milk because I bought yesterday. Sound good for my celebration of my March. It's going to be milk and donuts. Milk and donuts. That's going to be for me, and somebody's holding hands there, doing some of that good loving. That always gives me hope, and that's that rock and roll. So because of those four main elements, we have, of course, to implement the DRT, my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory. So because of those four, the growing cost of rents, the growing cost of living, the cheese, the bread, the eggs, even the toothpaste is increasing, the cost of coffee is increasing massively, cost of chocolate, cost of everyday things we live, the rents, the credit card debt, and the problem is also the stagnation of the salaries. The salaries are stagnating. The salaries are stagnating. The salaries are stagnating. Myself in financial stress. The only bill I have to pay this month, hopefully by September 20th, is at least half of my phone bill. Half of my phone bill, because I don't want to pay late fees and all that. So now we have established that. Now we got the solution, the DRT, debt refusion theory. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt. All the public and the private debt of Canada, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. My debt is $10,000. So my debt, your debt, all the debt. We're going to take it all. My debt, your debt, our debt. All the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to add it up. We're going to add all the public and the private debt. We're going to add it up. We're going to do the addition, including my 10,000. We're going to convert it into US dollars. And since we have to implement binationally, Canada, United States first and foremost, it can be extended to Mexico, the NATO complex, blah, 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 blah. First and foremost, United States, Canada, together binational. And it's part of the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world via fusion, Canada, United States. So DRT is incremental to the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, the empire of the 63. We're going to fuse Canada, United States by implementing first and foremost the DRT. So all the debt, public and private, we're going to take it all, we're going to collect it all. So we're going to add it all up, right? All the other money in circulation, and it requires my citizen brother Scorpio Bill Gates, Bill Gates, Scorpio of the stars, Bill Gates, Scorpio of the star, Bill Gates, Scorpio. And BlackRock and Blackstone are two financial institutions with diverged split in 1989, but they still work together on some issues. In other words, it takes a massive technological banking institution, both public and private banking institution across Canada and the United States, to work together to implement the DRT. So all the debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, added all up, converted into US dollars, added all the public-private debt of the United States, right? All that, plus the money in circulation. We're going to create a new bank, the Imperial Republic Central Bank of Canada and the United States. We're going to create the UE, U dot, Universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE, the universal exchange. The universal exchange unit, the U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The UE, the U, the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot universal. Universal exchange unit. No, so it's U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The UE, the UE, the UE stands for universal exchange unit, because that's what money is. So there could be a new dollar. So we're going to create this new central bank, going to get rid of the border. We're going to fuse the RCMP and the FBI. We're going to create the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the Dancing Goddess Army, aka the Imperial Integrated Dance League, with the DGA, the Dragon Army, with the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army, the DGA Dancing Goddess Army, with the Imperial Integrated Dance League for environmental education and action across the 63 24/7. The DGA, and of course the Dragon Army, the Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Imperial Integrated Dance League. What's that light? Satellite? Spy or UFO? What's that light in the sky? Spy, UFO? What's that light in the sky? So we're gonna create, of course, the UE. We're gonna create the UE. We're gonna create the UE, Universal Exchange Unit. The UE, the UE, the UE, the UE, as I go down to the mountain by the steps. The Universal Exchange Unit is going to have the value of the US dollar, the value of the US dollar. So the value of the US dollar, we're going to create the UE. Anybody want to finance? I go up and down these stairs 24, a few times, 100 times, a few times, 100 times or not. So we're going to create the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. With that money, we're going to mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise. And let's check out these yellow flowers here, because you know I love that yellow. We're going to mass embellish the empire. We're going to sign the Imperial Republic Constitutional Perpetual Union. We're going to fuse Canada and the United States. We're going to mass finance healthcare, not just for the rich, not just for the wealthy. Of course, we're going to mass finance fitness, mass finance healthcare, mass finance people to work out, train, exercise, mass finance, of course, the rebuilding of the North American Imperial Coliseum. We're going to mass finance the building of the 44 underground city tunnel structures, mass finance the building of the 44 city structures underneath. We're going to mass finance the building of the city structures underneath. It's going to be underneath. The mass building of the city structure underneath. And we're going to thus constitute the Imperial Coliseum. We're going to build the four, like I said, and that's what we're going to build. And mass finance fitness, mass finance healthcare, mass finance the intra-tourists. We're going to build more hydroelectric dams. The ministry, we're going to have 4 ministry established. Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Love, Ministry of Security, and Ministry, of course, of Wisdom, or something like that. Ministry of Wisdom, Ministry of Peace, Love, Security, and Ministry of Citizenship for volunteering. And we're going to mass finance tourism. We're going to mass finance tourist activities. So we have 4 seasons. We have spring, summer, autumn. We got spring, summer, autumn, and winter. We got winter, summer, spring, and autumn. So those 4, of course, we got. And those 4 that we got, of course, inside, we got to get it on the go. So those 4, every 4 months, actually it's 3 months, every 3 months, of course, we're going to, of course, finance, and we're going to do, of course, 4 days. So we're going to credit, of course, 4 days every semester. Every semester, of course, we're going to credit 4 days. Whence we're going to be, of course, crediting all citizens who are more than 16 years of age. We're going to, of course, credit them tourism. tourist activities. Basically, they can go anywhere across the 63 as we're going to get rid of the border. And food, shelter, housing is going to be financed. You can take 16 days a year. Well, you have to wait for the accumulation, or you can take 4 days. It's 4 nights. So when you leave in the morning, you got 4 nights where shelter, you can go. And of course, you can take 8. You have to wait for accumulation. So every 4 months is going to be 4 days. Once you're 16, those 4 days were going to be credited immediately, regardless of status, financial, economic status. So this is going to rejuvenate the North American Collective. It's going to rehabilitate us, and we're going to, of course, everybody's going to visit across the 63. So wherever one goes, if you go, of course, from Quebec to California, from Quebec, of course, you can go anywhere across the 63. So that is the mass tourism projects, which of course has to be implemented. So this mass tourist project has to be implemented across the 63. So we're going to take all the public and the private there, and of course we're going to integrate, of course, the mass public-private partnership. We're going to, of course, do this mass implementation of this tourism protocol for general overall wellness and joy. So 4 days every 4 months is going to be credited immediately at the equinox and the solstice and equinox, automatically for all citizens of the empire. Creditation from the empire, credit for the empire, accreditation from the benevolent empire, which is going to have 2 heads, 2 faces, just like that pi symbol N, because we have to work to have the best cordial relations with each other. Just like I said in my past videos, there's no way around that. That is just Canada and United States have to work due to our historical common collective precedents, and of course because of our present geographical position and the present geopolitical realities and our common destiny. Just like that pi symbol, we have to work to have the best, most cordial relations with each other. That's just the pi symbol, not the edible pie, not the one that you can eat, but the pi is the symbol, mathematical symbol, which represents the union, which represents the, of course, the relation, of course, between the circumference, of course, of the circle and the diameter of the circle. That's just something which, of course, we have, of course, to do. So that is just, of course, something which we gotta do in mind and, of course, calculate. And it's always 3.1416, and that's the constant, not a variable. Pi is a symbol which represents the constant, not a variable. It's always a constant. It's always the same between the circumference and that is the diameter and the circumference of the circle. So that is just our foreign, when it comes to foreign affairs for both Canada and the United States, and the United States vis-a-vis Canada, Canada vis-a-vis the United States. We have to work to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, social, cultural, military, defense relations, security-wise with each other. You cannot argue with that. You cannot say no. You have to say yes. And it's not even a maybe. That's just a constant because of our realities, how we are here, of course, in the North American Collective. Pledge allegiance to our family. Now we're going to switch a little bit of that French, because we are here on La Belle Province, encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. Once again, it is Wednesday, September 10th, and I'm heading back west, a bit, taking a little bit by downtown to get a little bit of that go. And I just remembered I got donuts from yesterday. I didn't eat them all, so tonight is going to be another donut and milk. Maybe a little bit of soup with that. Got some soup and got some go. Maybe I get some donations from that fridge at the corner when I get back. Pizza. For some reason, I'm hoping for some pizza. I'm just craving some pizza. If I would had more money, I would definitely buy a pizza. Just all dressed pizza. Just 4 slices for me. If it's 8 slices, 4 for my friend. 50-50, you know how it is. Pledge allegiance, the DRT, debt refusion treaty for the creation of the UE is the solution, because we got pressing matters. We got to implement it ASAP and support the dream, the Imperial public-private partnership. The dream is, of course, a fundamental call for a public-private partnership across the North American Collective. A mass public-private partnership has to be installed and instaurated in all, of course, the positions where we are now, of course, to live with the dynamics of where we are integrated in the appellations, where we got, of course, the number, of course, of the availabilities of the position that we are to take, that the DRT has to be a fundamental strategy which has to be incorporated, and we have to oversee everything that's coming in and out, of course, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, in all the directives where we are, of course, now fundamental for the aspects where we are involved, of course, to get it as a DRT, and of course to create the UE, the fundamental UE, of course, where we are now. To pledge allegiance, and that is just how it is, and how we have to circumvision and categorically start ASAP the work, which I aforementioned. No wasting time thereof. Pledge allegiance, friends will benefits only. That's just how we're gonna rock and roll with that. Contribute, and all my brothers and sisters, pledge allegiance to our family. Oh, pledge allegiance are the family, and that's how we gotta rock and roll with that, and that's how we have to go get it on the circumcision with the position where we are now, instaurated in this great work which we have, of course, to do for mass rehabilitation, of course, of the criminal population as well, in all the mass circumcision where we are now. So that is just the philosophy where we are, and that's where we are, of course, now, you know, to get on that goal, to get it now, and that is just something where we have, of course, to do now. So that is the French now, French time, and French is a time where we have, of course, to envision all our domains. So French. Bienvenue, je descends de la montagne québécoise. Je descends en pente, je me sens un peu comme ça l'après-midi, mais je suis parti pour mon entraînement, je commence à me sentir bien mieux, puis il y a bien de la géopolitique, tellement des événements, un peu des événements proches du désastre, voire même, vous savez que je suis pas seulement un artiste, athlète, mais je suis un mystique qui a l'Asperger's. Je vis avec une condition de neurodivergence, s'il vous plaît. Désignez pas l'Asperger's, l'autisme hautement fonctionnel, comme une maladie. C'est pas une maladie, je ne suis pas une maladie. L'Asperger, c'est une condition de neurodivergence. On a de la misère dans certaines choses. C'est pour ça que je perds mes amis. J'ai perdu mes amis. La misère à garder des emplois à long terme. Et j'ai vécu la dépression et le suicide. Puis oui, je répète 2-3 fois, des fois la même chose. L'école est là, j'ai comme des rituels routines du quotidien qui se tournent à aller à la montagne ou à la rivière ou faire l'entraînement physique ou faire la marche et bien sûr la géopolitique. Mais depuis des années, ça a donné un bon fruit que je suis moi-même un artiste athlète et je désigne bien sûr l'indépendance pour notre indépendance dans le collectif de sécurité et de services de défense qui sont mes protocoles que je vous présente. Ça fait un couple d'années déjà de la COVID, c'est quelque chose que j'ai survécu et bon pour dire avec la gratitude que je dois commencer cette marche de rock and roll qui va faire pour le français parce que moi si je le fais pas, mon effort individuel en tant que citoyen souverain, si je fais pas d'effort pour le français, ben ça veut dire que je manque d'efforts individuels pour le collectif, puis pour l'appréciation du français, parce que si on veut que les gens l'apprécient, la culture et tout ce qu'on a au Québec, dans le collectif du 63, toujours dans le contexte sociopolitique, géopolitique de l'Amérique du Nord, on se retrouve qu'il faut faire l'effort individuel. Donc moi-même, je le fais en tant qu'androgyne, pansexuel, neurodivergent, philosophe, qui vous chante du rock'n'roll, blablabla. Je vous souhaite de faire l'entraînement physique. La gratitude pour le mois de septembre. On est le 10 septembre. J'ai payé mon loyer, j'ai payé ma facture d'électricité. Puis la seule chose qui me reste comme facture à payer, c'est le téléphone avec lequel je fais cette vidéo d'entraînement pour le YouTube. Puis bien sûr, je dois saluer les travailleurs d'Hydro-Québec parce qu'on a ces lumières qui ne polluent pas. Puis l'électricité en dedans de mon téléphone a été pluguée aujourd'hui. Hop, un anglicisme. J'ai chargé mon téléphone, je l'ai mis dans la prise pour faire le chargement de l'électricité pour aller en dedans dans la batterie du téléphone. Puis c'est l'électricité qui est renouvelable, qui vient de l'eau. Donc c'est quelque chose que je dois toujours souligner en tant qu'artiste, athlète et philosophe. Et bien sûr, nord-américain dans le collectif, bien sûr, toujours pour s'afficher pour la montagne, ma deuxième maison que je vais, bien sûr, dans ce contexte de la politique, pour être, bien sûr, dans l'entraînement physique et pour faire que... Oh, il me reste pas de temps pour que je traverse. Je pensais que j'allais avoir plus de temps, mais je vois même qu'il ne reste pas de temps pour que je traverse. Donc, je souligne bien sûr que j'aille bien sûr pour le collectif. Je commence avec la gratitude encore une fois. J'ai des beignes chez nous, j'ai des beignes en situation verbale pour être bien sûr pour le faire de cette situation de convergence ici. Puis si vous entendez bien sûr la police ou les sirènes de police, les alarmes bien sûr de la police, des ambulances ou bien sûr des pompiers, ralentissez, ne marchez pas si vite, ne pesez pas sur la pédale, regardez, faites un 360, un 180 à la gauche, à la droite, un 180 à la gauche, à la droite, un 180 à la droite, à la gauche, puis vous tournez en arrière, ça va faire un cercle, 180 plus 180, ça va faire un 360 pour la sécurité dans le public. On a des responsabilités additionnelles, comme moi-même, je me mets les pieds en pause, puis je surveille, je regarde à gauche, à droite, voir s'il n'y a pas d'automobile, pour voir, parce que je dois être un bon samaritain moi-même, et ça a parti, là, on est dans sécurité, on traverse, fait que j'ai entendu qu'il y a un couple de secondes, puis même que le bonhomme, madame, moi-même en tant que monsieur, madame, j'ai vu que déjà j'avais trop, mais j'ai décidé d'être patient pour que je traverse. J'ai patienté pour traverser, bien sûr, pour le faire dans ce cas d'être, bien sûr, dans la main pour avoir la sécurité dans le public, puis mon concitoyen, cousin, avec la bicyclette, je vous encourage à l'entraînement physique. Ça fait toujours quelque chose que je fasse, bien sûr, dans la même dominion que ça fait, bien sûr, que j'ai des responsabilités additionnelles dans le public. Puis pas juste moi-même, mais vous les avez aussi. Hein? Quand je sors dehors, j'ai des responsabilités additionnelles. Puis vous savez, avec la neurodivergence, c'est pas toujours facile la manière qu'on communique. Ça a été facile de garder les amis, avec tout ça. Puis c'est quelque chose que j'ai appris, bien sûr. Ça fait quand même un couple de mois, là. Bien, ça fait plus d'années, là. Ça fait quand même des années que j'ai fait, bien sûr, cette situation du compromis que j'avais fait, mais c'est sûr que j'ai fait dans cette situation d'avoir de cette chantage, d'avoir fait, bien sûr, de ce compromis de divergence, puis ce compromis d'où que je me retrouve dans cette situation aujourd'hui, à vivre avec cette condition de neurodivergence, pour vivre dans ce fait, bien sûr, d'avoir de la condition de neurodivergence, pour que je sois, bien sûr, dans ce domaine, d'avoir une certaine difficulté avec les interactions sociales. Tu sais, c'est plus difficile pour nous, hein? Les Asperger, la compréhension sociale, les neurodivergents, de fois on est direct nous-mêmes, puis on a bien sûr de certaines choses qu'on va jamais changer. Il va falloir qu'on travaille, mais c'est pas une maladie, donc bien sûr, on peut pas bien sûr dire que c'est une maladie dans le sens de maladie, tu sais, parce que c'est pas ça, l'Asperger, c'est une condition de neurodivergence, et donc il n'y a pas de médicament pour l'Asperger, donc je dois faire toujours la gestion de ces caractéristiques. Bien sûr, c'est une gestion continue, puis ça continue, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, dans ce point de compromis, d'avoir du soutien. C'est quelque chose que j'ai pas besoin beaucoup de soutien personnellement, c'est juste la compréhension, puis vous savez que nous, les Asperger, il faut nous le dire des fois directement, parce qu'il y a des choses que, bien sûr, nous-mêmes, on a de la misère à savoir, il faut nous le dire, il faut nous le dire plus directement, quand prendre distance, quand avoir, bien sûr, dans ce point de compromis, bien sûr, d'avoir dans ce point, bien sûr, pour le faire de ce monde. C'est ça, bien sûr, pour le faire dans ce point de situation qu'on est, bien sûr, rendu aujourd'hui à vivre de cette condition que j'ai acceptée. Mais ça faisait 9 ans, comme l'avait dit, diagnostiquer des citoyens, bien sûr, indépendants. Ça faisait 9 ans, comme l'avait dit. Hein. Mais c'est des citoyens qui ont de l'expérience, bien sûr, dans le travail, avec la santé, dans le travail, bien sûr, dans le... Oh, je m'en viens. Dans le travail, bien sûr, pour avoir la concordance, bien sûr, c'est quelque chose que je dois même, bien sûr, me situer, bien sûr, en tant que neurodivergent, pour être, bien sûr, dans la constance, ou que, bien sûr, on doit savoir, dans ce point de domaine, que moi-même, en tant que neurodivergent, c'est pas quelque chose, bien sûr, que je dois avoir de la constance. C'est quelque chose, bien sûr, que je dois le dire moi-même, dans ce point de situation, bien sûr, que... je suis différent, bien sûr, c'est la différence, bien sûr, que je dois faire, bien sûr, quelque chose que ça m'intéresse, bien sûr, dans ce point de domaine où on vit, et que c'est quelque chose que on a toujours une situation plus proche que de l'autre, puis plus proche à se rapprocher dans ces circonstances. Bien sûr, d'avoir de la circonstance où qu'on vit, puis c'est juste que notre cerveau, il y a certaines différences. Hein, fait que, à cause de ces mutations, bien sûr, ça fait que ces mutations, bien sûr, ça font, bien sûr, qu'on voit le monde différemment. Fait que là, on processe, les choses sociales deviennent plus difficiles. Fait qu'on n'a pas, bien sûr, dans ce point de convergence où qu'on vit, bien sûr. Quelque chose, bien sûr, qu'on fait, bien sûr, comme en tant que répétition, en tant que rituel routine, et toutes ces choses-là du quotidien, puis le social, ça devient plus difficile pour nous, la compréhension. Donc, ça faisait 9 ans, comme l'avait dit, j'ai toujours dit non, là. Mais je voulais pas accepter qu'on stigme, parce qu'on a une petite minorité, là, puis c'est quand même un stigme, tu sais. C'est quand même un petit stigme, mais depuis comme 44 mois, à peu près, durant la COVID, 3 ans et demi, parce que comme j'ai dit, plusieurs citoyens et citoyennes qui me l'avaient dit et qui ont l'expérience dans le domaine de la santé m'ont dit, vous sais que tu as l'Asperger, tu es autiste, t'es sur le spectre, c'est pour ça que tu as ces difficultés-là, c'est pour ça que tu vois le monde de même, puis tu as ces intérêts, tu sais. Tu as ces intérêts obsessifs, tu as ces intérêts spéciaux, bien sûr. Puis à cause de ces intérêts spéciaux, bien sûr, tu te préoccupes à vivre dans cette condition que tu vis au quotidien. Fait que c'est sûr que c'est plus difficile pour toi de comprendre ces enjeux de la société, tu sais. Ces enjeux de la société. Fait que toi, tu peux pas avoir des enjeux de la société de même parce que tu vois le monde différemment, tu sais. Parce que tu vois le monde différemment. Fait que parce que toi, tu vois le monde différemment, tu t'es perçu différemment aussi. Fait que cette différence, bien sûr, ça vient, bien sûr, de ce point, bien sûr, que toi, tu vis comme un extraterrestre. Tu sais, mais c'est pas d'être négatif. Fait que c'est pas négatif, tu sais, c'est pas négatif. C'est pas dans le négatif, bien sûr que tu sois, bien sûr, dans ce domaine, d'avoir dans ce domaine d'être négatif ou mauvais, tu sais. C'est quelque chose, bien sûr, qu'on aille, bien sûr, dans ce monde de contingence, bien sûr, qu'avoir. C'est pas négatif, c'est pas mauvais. C'est ça qu'il faut dire la ligne où qu'on doit dire non, puis rejeter, tu sais, toutes les caractérisations de l'Asperger, de l'autisme monofonctionnel en tant que négatif, en tant que mauvais. Parce que c'est pas ni mauvais, ni